Chapter 29-23. Ever since then, when Xiron had been working hard to overcome his fear of water, gradually, his progress was noticed by everyone. At the very least, when Xiron was now very familiar with water and no longer felt unfamiliar or fearful. Seeing this change, everyone's hearts leaped with joy. It seemed that success was not far away. On this day, when Xiron's head popped out of the water and excitedly shouted to Shangguan Yingying, "Yingying, I've learned it." Shangguan Yingying could not help but hurriedly stand up and look at when Xiron swimming in the pool. Her face was full of joy. "It's true. You've really learned it." Debachin's face was full of smiles as he stood beside when Xiron. The bright sunlight shone on the two strong and handsome figures, and the water droplets reflected a bright and resplendent light. However, none of this could compare to the brilliance of their smiles. "Xiron, you're amazing." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and gave Xiron a thumbs up. When Xiron stroked his hair proudly and raised his chin 45 degrees, saying, "Of course, I'm a handsome man who can do anything." If when Xiron had said such a thing under normal circumstances, everyone would have laughed at him. However, at this moment, everyone let him be. After when Xiron had mastered the skill of swimming, he had become the most interested in water among the four of them. Usually, when they were hurrying along, as long as there was a river at the place where they were stationed, when Xiron would definitely go back and swim. From time to time, he would sigh and lament that he could not understand why he was afraid of water in the past. He only felt that it was inconceivable that something like that had happened to him in the past. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were also silent. This guy was also the most shameless person in the world. Under such continuous practice, when Xiron's swimming skills became better and better, everyone no longer had to worry that when Xiron would be in danger because he was not good at swimming. Finally, under the relentless haste of the four people, they successfully arrived at the extreme south. Looking at the vast ocean in front of them, a hint of surprise and confusion appeared on the faces of the four of them at the same time. Even though they already knew that this would be a very large sea area, they could only see the boundless sea in front of them. They couldn't see any further than that. They only felt like they were in a sea of clouds. As far as the eye could see, not a single island could be seen. Only the azure sea water and a vast expanse of white fog could be seen in the distance. "I don't know how long it will take for us to reach Penglai Island." Shangguan Yingying stared blankly at the sea of clouds in front of her. It seemed that the distance between Penglai Island and the island was really far. "We can't determine the exact time. We can only take one step at a time," Debachin said in a deep voice. Stepping onto this sea would be a brand new journey for them. "What are you afraid of?" Back then, my old man set off alone without caring about anything. The four of us are much more prepared than my old man back then. All these years, my old man always felt that my ability was not enough. I'll take this opportunity to let him understand my true strength. In the next second, when Xiron directly took out a gold-and-silver ship from his chinkoan bag. Chapter 29-24. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were immediately attracted by the ship. The material was extraordinary. "Is the hull made of mithril?" Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, when Xiron's eyes lit up, and he gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. "I didn't know you were an expert. This mithril is mixed with some deep-sea black gold, which greatly enhances the stability of the hull. The ability to break the waves is also excellent. Such a ship is really a weapon when drifting on the sea." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were full of admiration. Although they had also prepared a ship, it was completely different from the ship that when Xiron had taken out. At least, with such a ship, even if they were attacked by demon beasts, they didn't need to worry about the hull being destroyed. It greatly increased their safety. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang see through all the mysteries of the ship, when Xiron's eyes flashed with a thick color of surprise. "This ship was given to me by my old man before I left. In order to give us a little more protection, what you said is really the same as my old man. Before my old man introduced it, I didn't know that this ship had so many benefits." "How did you see it?" When Xiron's handsome face was full of curiosity. Bailey Hongzhuang's words really surprised him. There are many things that you don't know. My wife's ability is not something that an ordinary person like you can understand. Di Beichen joked. When Xiren's face fell, "You're simply a wife slave." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I have dabbled in inscription techniques, so I have some understanding of these rare metals." When Xiren showed a look of understanding. He had long heard that Bailey Hongzhuang was a multi-talented person, and many of her abilities were beyond the scope of understanding. They could only be said to be geniuses in cultivation, but Bailey Hongzhuang was a genius in many aspects. "Let's go." Xiren took the lead to step on the ship, and then extended his hand to Shangguan Yingying. Shangguan Yingying also walked on the ship. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang walked on the ship together, and the three beasts followed behind. The four people and three beasts began their days of drifting on the sea. The sea is boundless. As long as we keep going south, we should be able to reach Penglai Island. Xiren slowly said. In such a sea area, their ship was simply too small. That's right, Penglai Island is at the southernmost part of the Shengxin continent. Di Beichen nodded. Xiren and I will be responsible for controlling the direction of the ship. Wife, you and Yingying should have a good rest. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying both smiled and nodded. When you are tired, it's our turn. Us too. The three beasts were unwilling to be left out. It seems that we have sufficient manpower. Everyone chuckled, and the days of drifting on the sea began. The days of drifting on the sea were undoubtedly extremely boring. They were surrounded by seawater, and there was still no end in sight. There was no village in front of them, and there was no shop behind them. This feeling was really uncomfortable. However, the four of them were cultivators and had long been accustomed to rough days. Therefore, the environment that looked exactly the same every day did not drive them crazy. Chapter 29-25. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had also fought with the demonic beasts. Just as they had expected, the demonic beasts in the sea were very powerful, and their numbers were very large. Once they were entangled with a group of demonic beasts, it would be a huge problem. Even with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's cultivation, they had suffered heavy injuries when they encountered a group of demonic beasts. Fortunately, the hull of the ship was sturdy enough. Otherwise, the demonic beasts would have broken it, and the four situation would have been even more dangerous. On the surface of the sea, once they fought, the demonic beasts would have the upper hand because they could dive into the sea at any time. It could be said that the enemy was in the dark while they were in the light. They had to be vigilant at all times to guard against the enemy's sneak attack. This was undoubtedly very tiring and exhausting. Even with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other threes taking turns to watch over them, it was still an extremely tiring task. There were very few people heading towards Penglai Island. Hence, these demonic beasts had treated Bailey Hongzhuang and the other threes as delicious food and had their eyes fixed on them at all times. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other threes could be said to be transitioning from one demonic beast territory to the next. They were really helpless. As the king of the land, the white lion's aura had a certain effect. However, it was far less effective than when it was in the mountains. On the contrary, once the white lion released its aura, it could easily attract some extremely powerful demonic beasts to compete with it. This caused Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to fall into an even more dangerous situation. It was really frustrating. It seems that we have underestimated the terror of the demonic beasts in the sea. Xiren sighed faintly. Thinking back to when they had just started drifting on the sea, it was still all right and there were not many problems. However, as they gradually went deeper, the demonic beast's powers continued to increase. He could only feel that under the seemingly calm sea, there were countless demonic beasts piled up. He finally understood why only cultivators of the 5th level of the Purple Realm and above could enter Penglai Island. In fact, cultivators who had not reached this level of cultivation would never be able to cross this sea, let alone reach Penglai Island. The number of these demonic beasts is too shocking. Once we encounter a group of demonic beasts, it's like poking a hornet's nest. Just thinking about it makes me scared. Shangguan Yingying shrunk her neck, as if she was thinking about being attacked by a group of demonic beasts a few days ago. If they were on land, even if they encountered a group of monstrous beasts, they still had a way to escape. However, on the surface of the sea, there was really no other way except to barge through. I don't know. How much longer until we reach Penglai Island? Recently, the Yao beasts we encounter are getting stronger and stronger. Thankfully, these powerful Yao beasts do not appear often. Most of them are probably cultivating themselves, otherwise our situation would be much worse. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black eyes flickered with a sigh. She felt that they had finally come into contact with the true power of the Shengxian continent. Ever since she had transmigrated, she had always felt that the Shengxian continent was much weaker than it was 1,000 years ago. But now, it seemed that it was not that the Shengxian continent's power had weakened, but that all the powerhouses had moved to one place. Even though she had yet to reach Penglai Island, she could tell how powerful Penglai Island was from the current situation. Chapter 29-26. Di Beichen's handsome and resolute face flashed with a dignified look. With their current strength, if they were to encounter a group of monsters again, it would be really dangerous. Most importantly, as they ventured deeper into the forest, the strength of these demonic beasts continued to increase. The demonic beasts' sneak attacks and ability to hide their auras were not comparable to the demonic beasts they had encountered before. If they were slightly careless and were ambushed, it could attract other underwater monsters. It was no different from poking a hornet's nest. In my opinion, we should upgrade from 1 person to 2 people guarding this place. The Yao beasts here are getting more and more cunning. It's safer this way, when Xiren suggested. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded in agreement. With their cultivation, it was like walking on thin ice. If they were not careful, their lives would be in danger. Thinking about it, even a 5th-level Purple Realm cultivator might lose their life if they were to be surrounded by monsters here. However, in the process of continuous fighting, everyone's combat strength was constantly increasing. During this period of training, the speed of improvement was much faster than cultivating in the sect. Pain and happiness, this must be how it felt. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating when she suddenly heard Shangguan Yingying's exclamation. She couldn't help but open her eyes. Look, there seems to be a boat in front. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look in the direction that Shangguan Yingying was pointing. In fact, they had been drifting on this sea for so long, but they had never seen anyone other than themselves. Sometimes, they even suspected that they were looking in the wrong direction. Otherwise, it would be too strange to not see anyone after drifting on the sea for half a month. Shangguan Yingying's voice couldn't help but give them a lot of hope. Being able to meet someone here at least proved that they were heading in the right direction. Bailey Hongzhuang looked carefully. Sure enough, there was a small boat in the distance. It looked very small in the vast sea, but it was visible at a glance. There really is someone here. Xiren's face showed a touch of surprise. After being here for so long, we finally see other people. It's really not easy. The people here are stronger than us in cultivation. We still don't know if they are friends or enemies. We should be careful. Di Beichen was not so optimistic. Instead, his face sank. As Di Beichen's voice fell, the smile on Xiren's face also faded a little. He also remembered his old man's reminder before they set off. There were many powerhouses on Penglai Island. Almost everyone had their own trump cards to succeed. It was because they were all powerhouses, the competition was particularly fierce. Compared to the cruelty of Penglai Island, the things that Xiren had experienced in the past were nothing. After arriving at Penglai Island, don't believe everything that anyone says. Otherwise, you will definitely suffer a great loss. As long as we are sure that there are people here, it means that we are heading in the right direction. Then there's no need to worry. In my opinion, we should not have any interaction with the other party and go our own way. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, Then let's do that. Chapter 29-27. The boat gradually grew from the size of a sesame seed to the size of tangerine. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could see it more clearly, but they still did not know the situation of the other party. Just then, Baishir wrinkled his nose and said, "There's a strong smell of blood." As soon as these words came out, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others changed a bit. As a mystical beast, Baishir's nose has always been very sensitive. Since it had said this, it could not be wrong. The smell of blood? Shangguan Yingying furrowed her brows as a puzzled look flashed across her pretty little face. Could it be that there's internal strife, and they're killing each other? Baishir shook his head. The smell of blood is very strong. If it's only a few people killing each other, there wouldn't be such a strong smell of blood. That means that the other party must be fighting against the mystical beasts. Perhaps they've been attacked by a horde of mystical beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment before speaking slowly. Hearing this, Baishir nodded and said, "That's very likely. So the other party is in trouble. Being surrounded and attacked by a horde of mystical beasts in a place like this is not a good feeling at all." When Xiren sighed emotionally, if it was possible, he would never want to experience the feeling of running into a horde of mystical beasts again. Then what should we do now? If we continue forward, those mystical beasts might treat us as a team and attack us together. Shangguan Yingying's expression turned ugly. Even though she did not know what kind of mystical beasts they were, she knew that they would not be easy to deal with. However, even if we continue to stay here, once those mystical beasts finish off the fellow on the boat, we'll still be attacked as long as we pass through that area of the sea. When Xiren said in a low voice, based on their understanding during this period of time, they discovered that as long as the smell of blood wafted out, the mystical beasts in the sea would become excited. The chances of them being attacked would also greatly increase. Let's continue to move closer and see the situation before we make a decision. Di Beichen's pitch-black eyes flickered with a wise and calm light. They were still uncertain about the situation and could only take one step at a time. "All right," Xiren nodded and continued to steer the small boat forward. As they gradually approached, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could see the situation in front of them more clearly. As it turned out, there were a total of 2 cultivators on the ship, and they were currently fighting to their heart's content. A thick smell of blood spread out from the 2 of them. The clear seawater nearby had already been dyed red. Even though they were still some distance away, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 could see the terrifying number of demonic beasts. This should be an aquamarine thornfish. Its combat ability is comparable to a cultivator of the first level of the Purple Realm. In addition to the fact that the cultivator's combat ability is restricted by the sea, the aquamarine thornfish's combat ability is comparable to a cultivator of the second level of the Purple Realm. An entire school of aquamarine thorns had appeared here. It was simply too terrifying. When Xiren couldn't help but exclaim, this situation was a little too terrifying. Once he was entangled by the school of aquamarine bramble fish, there was only a slim chance of survival. How did these 2 guys provoke the Shanghai blue thorns? This is too unlucky. Shangguan Yingying sighed. This was simply a nightmare for cultivators. Chapter 29-28. The other party's strength should have just reached Purple Realm Level 5. After fighting for so long, they're starting to show signs of fatigue. If this goes on, their lives might be in danger. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the situation not far away and made a judgment. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were looking ahead, the 2 people who were exhausted from dealing with the aquamarine brambles noticed them approaching. Excitement surfaced on their faces, and they immediately asked Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 for help. "Friends, please help us. These aquamarine brambles love to feed on human flesh. As soon as they discover a human passing by, they'll attack in groups. Why don't we work together to get rid of these aquamarine brambles? It won't be bad for you." The 2 people looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 anxiously, hoping that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 could help. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other, feeling conflicted. They had some information about the aquamarine brambles, but they only knew about their strength and did not know much about their temperament. In fact, most of what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others knew was the wicked beasts on land. They knew little about the wicked beasts in the deep sea. At this moment, listening to the words of the two people, they didn't know whether it was true or false. However, if they worked together, it would not be too difficult to get rid of these aquamarine brambles. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were not worried about this. Instead, they were worried that once they made a move, their cultivation would be unintentionally exposed. Originally, the four of them had the means to conceal their strength. As long as they did not make a move, others would not be able to determine their cultivation. This was also one of the reasons why they dared to go to Penglai Island. If they could not conceal their aura, they would be no different from sitting ducks on Penglai Island. At this level of cultivation, almost no one would take them seriously. If they wanted to make a move, they could do so as they pleased. Now that the other party was in danger, their attitude towards them was naturally very good. However, once their cultivations were exposed and the threat of the blue thorns fish was gone, they did not know if the other party would have any ill intentions. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were pondering over this question, they suddenly realized that the bottom of their boat had suffered a heavy blow. Bang! A huge force attacked the bottom of their boat, as if trying to overturn their boat. Not good. The sea blue thorns are still attacking us. Xiron's expression changed. He could see the sea blue thorns underwater through the seawater. Seeing this, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and couldn't help but say, "It seems that we have no other choice." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "We can only take one step at a time. Fortunately, there are only two of them." Hearing this, when Xiron and Shangguan Yingying also understood, there are only two of them. Even if their cultivation was at Purple Realm level 5, the four of them might still be able to fight back if they worked together. At this moment, Di Beichun said to the other two, "All right, let's work together." The two of them could not help but sigh in relief when they heard Di Beichun's words. That's great. Vigorous origin energy exploded from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three at the same time. They all took out their weapons and attacked the sea blue thorns underwater. Chapter 29-29. The four of them were only at the third level of the Purple Realm, which was only one level higher than the aquamarine brambles. It wasn't a problem to deal with these aquamarine brambles in a short period of time, but once they were surrounded, they would have to be extra careful. Don't worry. Xiron raised his head. His handsome and gentle face was full of confidence. Although they were only at the third level of the Purple Realm, as the young sect master of the Cloud Sword sect, his strength was not something an ordinary third level of the Purple Realm could compare to. Beichen, why don't we compete to see who can kill more aquamarine brambles? Xiron chuckled. Di Beichen pierced the aquamarine bramble's body with his sword, then turned around and replied, "Sure." Seeing that the two of them could still hold such a relaxed attitude at this time, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips could not help but reveal a smile. Life was like this. What kind of attitude you use to look at life is what kind of life is like. At a time like this, the three beasts naturally wouldn't fall behind. They were also very good at things like fighting and killing. Although these fishes were very slippery and difficult to catch, it also aroused the competitive spirit in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang's colored glass sword pierced the body of an aquamarine bramble and took out the demon crystal in its body. Demon crystals had always been the white lion's food. The demon crystals of the demonic beasts in the sea were mostly sky blue, like sapphires. Under the illumination of the sun, it was very beautiful. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang took out the demon crystal, she unexpectedly discovered that there was actually another thing in the demonic beast's body. After Bailey Hongzhuang took it out, she discovered that it seemed to be a demonic beast gallbladder, but it was emitting a rich aura of origin energy. This was not among the demonic beasts she had encountered before. It was really strange. What is this? Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. A look of contemplation flashed in her eyes. Could it be that this was something unique to the demonic beasts in the sea? However, this didn't seem right. This was because none of the demonic beasts they had killed before had such a thing. Why was that? With that thought in mind, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately attacked another sea bluethorn fish to find out if all sea bluethorn fish had such a gall in their bodies. When the second bluethorn fish died at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, she found a demon crystal and a beast gallbladder in the body of the other bluethorn fish. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately put the items away. Now is obviously not the time to think about these problems. Getting rid of these blue thorns was the most important thing. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three joined the battle, the pressure on the other two was greatly reduced, and they finally had a chance to catch their breath. However, when the two of them noticed the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, a strange look appeared in their eyes. We have to get rid of these sea bluethorn fish as soon as possible. The smell of blood is spreading further and further. If this continues, I'm afraid it will attract other demonic beasts. Di Baichen couldn't help but remind them when he saw that the two of them had slowed down after getting a chance to catch their breath. For demonic beasts, there was a clear division of territories. This area obviously belonged to the sea bluethorn fish, so they didn't encounter other demonic beasts. Chapter 29:30. The only thing they could do now was to get rid of these aquamarine brambles as soon as possible and leave this place as soon as possible. That was the safest way. The two nodded after hearing Di Baichen's words and replied, "We understand." As the 6 of them and the 3 beasts killed, the number of aquamarine brambles rapidly decreased. After seeing how powerful Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were, the aquamarine brambles no longer had their previous vigor. Even their attacking speed had decreased a little, as if they no longer had the courage to continue fighting. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. This level of battle was quite taxing on them. If they continued fighting like this, even if they killed all the aquamarine brambles, they would definitely fall into a weakened state. If they were attacked by other monsters at this time, it would undoubtedly be very dangerous. Now that the aquamarine brambles had chosen to retreat, it was undoubtedly for the best. When the first aquamarine bramble chose to retreat, the other aquamarine brambles stopped their attacks and gradually retreated to the bottom of the sea. Let's take this opportunity to leave quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest made a prompt decision and steered the boat forward. The sooner they left this place, the safer they would be. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest rowed the boat to the 2 men, they realized that they were cultivators around the age of 30. However, when a cultivator's cultivation reached a certain level, the speed at which their appearance changed would greatly decrease. Therefore, although the 2 men looked to be in their 30s, their real age was very likely to be older than that. When the 2 men saw the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, a look of surprise flashed across their eyes. Especially when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying, they were even more stunned. "Thank you for your help. If it weren't for your help, us 2 brothers would have become food for the aquamarine brambles." The older of the 2 men spoke first. He cupped his fists towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest with gratitude on his face. "Brother, you don't have to be so courteous. We were just helping out. With your strength, it's only a matter of time before you get rid of these aquamarine brambles," replied Di Baichen. "I'm sure the 4 of you are also heading to Penglai Island, right?" The man revealed a kind smile. "I thought us 2 brothers were already considered young, but after seeing the 4 of you, we feel ashamed. They could definitely be called geniuses among cultivators for reaching level 5 Purple Realm at their age. However, when they faced with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, they could even be called young and immature. They dared not call themselves geniuses. You're too kind. We are friends when we meet. This place is not far from Penglai Island. I wonder if you can save us until the end and give us a ride?" The man spoke rather awkwardly. His expression revealed that he was in a bit of a difficult position. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest noticed that the boat under their feet had started to leak water. The aquamarine bramble's attack was just too powerful. Even if their boat was not made of ordinary materials, it was still unavoidable for them to be destroyed. Chapter 29:31. The two brothers were obviously not stupid. After seeing the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they understood what they were thinking and immediately explained. We brothers are not ungrateful people who don't know how to repay kindness. The four of you can rest assured. Presumably, this is your first time going to Penglai Island. There must be a lot of things you don't know about Penglai Island. The two of us can give you an introduction. Relying on friends when going out. Isn't this the situation? Bei-chun and Xiren thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "All right then." They made this choice because they had another concern. The two-men's ship was obviously useless. Without a ship on the sea, it was tantamount to a dead end. If they disagreed, they would only force the other party to fight with them. Rather than that, it was better to give the other party a chance. Maybe the other party really did not have any bad intentions. After seeing Bei-chun and Xiren agree, the two brothers' faces showed a touch of joy. They thanked them repeatedly. "Thank you. Thank you. You are really chivalrous." After the two men stepped on the ship, they looked at the hull and could not help but sigh. "I'm afraid the few of you have an extraordinary background. This ship is not ordinary at first glance. Our previous ship was specially made. I didn't expect it to be unable to withstand the destructive power of the aquamarine thornfish." Xiren smiled faintly and said, "I was just lucky to get this ship. I didn't expect it to come in handy here. I'm Gao Hanxia, and this is my brother Gao Hanxiao. May I know your names?" Di-chun, Wenran, Shang Waning, Lonnie Xuan, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others said their names one by one. This was something they had thought about before. Although Penglai Island did not have much contact with the forces in Shangxian continent, the four of them were quite famous in Shangxian continent. As long as the cultivators who went to Penglai Island later on, it was very likely that they would know their names. Once exposed, it would not be a good thing. It was better to hide a little more. "I see. How did the four of you find out about the existence of Penglai Island?" Gao Hanxia asked curiously. "How did young Master Gao know about Penglai Island?" Xiren did not answer Gao Hanxia's question. Instead, he asked a question of his own. "To tell you the truth, there is another big brother above me and third brother. His name is Gao Hanshan. His cultivation talent is stronger than mine and third brother's. It was by chance that he came into contact with Penglai Island first. Later on, he sent a message telling third brother and me to set off for Penglai Island after we reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm. The reason why third brother and I were able to reach this level of cultivation was because of my big brother. Otherwise, it would have taken a long time for the two of us to cultivate to this level." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three revealed a look of understanding on their faces, and they had a better impression of Gao Hanxia for being straightforward. "I see. In that case, young Master Gao has a big brother to take care of you on Penglai Island. It is undoubtedly excellent." Gao Hanxia nodded and a smile appeared on his face. "Yes, but my big brother also told us that Penglai Island is very dangerous. The four of you have to be careful when you go there. Young Master Gao, do you know what this is?" Chapter 29:32. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang take out the beast gallbladder, Bei-chun and the other two's eyes also lit up. They also discovered this point, and were also very curious in their hearts. But they were busy dealing with the sea bluethorn fish and didn't have time to talk about it. Gao Hanxia saw the thing in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and couldn't help but smile. "It seems that you guys really don't know much about Penglai Island. This thing is called the gallbladder, which is the monster beast gallbladder. Since it's just a monster beast gallbladder, why does it have such a strong aura of origin power? You guys don't know? The Purple Realm is a watershed for both human cultivators and monster beasts. Once you cross into the Purple Realm, it's a completely different realm. As long as the monster beast breaks through to the Purple Realm, the gallbladder in its body will transform into an origin gallbladder, which is condensed from origin power. The function of the origin gallbladder is similar to that of the monster crystal. It's used by the monster beast to condense power, but the monster crystal can often only be used to refine pills or inscription techniques. It's not much help to human cultivators, but this origin gallbladder can help a cultivator improve their cultivation. It's really a good thing. Listening to Gao Hanxia's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces flashed with a touch of surprise. They didn't know that the monster beast would have such a change after breaking through to the purple realm. Bailey Hongzhuang secretly sighed in her heart. It seemed that 1,000 years was really enough to change a lot. This monster beast had evolved a lot compared to before. In the past, monster beasts above the purple realm didn't have this origin gallbladder, so she was so surprised when she saw it. Young Master Gao, how do we absorb the energy of this origin gallbladder? When Xiren couldn't help but ask. This is very simple. As long as you hold it in your hand and operate the cultivation method, the energy will naturally be absorbed by us. The energy in the origin gallbladder is not as violent as that in the monster crystal, so we can absorb it very well. For us, hunting more monster beasts to obtain the origin gallbladder is also a good thing to improve our cultivation speed. According to my big brother, the reason why Penglai Island was established on an island is because the number of monsters in the sea area is extremely high. The number of monsters that have reached the purple realm and above is also much more than in the mountain range. It is the most convenient to obtain the guts here. I see. After listening to young Master Gao's introduction, we have really learned something new, Di Beichen said with a smile. Gao Hanxiao waved his hand. Young Master Di, you are too polite. This is news that everyone on Penglai Island knows. You will naturally know when you reach Penglai Island. I'm just telling you in advance. If it weren't for my big brother introducing us to these things, we would have come to Penglai Island in the dark. From the looks of it, your big brother should have stayed in Penglai Island for quite some time. He knows so much about Penglai Island, Shangguan Yingying said curiously. Currently, they knew very little about Penglai Island. Finally, they met someone who knew about Penglai Island. Naturally, they were eager to know more. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's question, Gao Hanxia's face showed a touch of pride. My big brother has stayed in Penglai Island for many years. Now, he has a certain amount of power on Penglai Island. The four of you must have gone to Penglai Island to train. However, Penglai Island is very dangerous. If you are interested, you can come with us to find my big brother. Chapter 29:33. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three quietly looked at each other. It seemed that their guess was right. Gao Hanshun did have a certain status on Penglai Island. However, they did not have any thoughts of seeking refuge from others. First, they had to go to the auction to find the 2 herbs that Di Beichen needed. As for the rest, they did not need to consider it for the time being. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 did not agree, but they also did not refuse. After all, Gao Hanxia's suggestion was for their own good. No one knew what would happen after they went to Penglai Island. Gao Hanxia looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' reaction and understood their thoughts. He did not say anything and just chatted with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others about other things. There are so few people going to Penglai Island. If we didn't meet you, we really don't know how to reach Penglai Island. Gao Hanxia smiled slightly. His face was full of emotion, but more importantly, there was a bit of joy. Xiren also smiled and nodded. We also found out about the existence of Penglai Island by chance. We only know that it is located in the extreme south, but we don't know the specific location. So we just kept going south. If we didn't meet you, we would have started to suspect that we were going in the wrong direction. So it turns out that we are not the only ones who have this idea. Gao Hanxia laughed, but we are all cultivators. We all know how difficult it is to break through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm. I think there are not many people going to Penglai Island every year. The faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others all showed a look of approval. If there were many people going to Penglai Island every day, it would be really incredible. After such a conversation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 gradually became familiar with Gao Hanxia and the 2 brothers. They were not as repulsive as before, but they were still a little vigilant. Look, there seems to be an island in front. Bailey Hongzhuang looked ahead and saw an island appear on the wide and calm sea. She couldn't help but feel excited. As Bailey Hongzhuang finished speaking, everyone looked in the direction that Bailey Hongzhuang was pointing at. Their faces revealed joyful smiles. Is that Penglai Island? Shangguan Yingying asked doubtfully. Her soft and sweet voice was full of expectation. They had been drifting on the sea for such a long time, but this was the first time they had seen an island. That's not Penglai Island, Gao Hanqiu said. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at Gao Hanqiu. Obviously, Gao Hanqiu and his brother, who knew more about Penglai Island, had the right to speak. Penglai Island is a very large island. Its size is not something that this island can compare to. Gao Hanqiu smiled. However, according to my brother, as long as we see the first island, we will not be far from the real Penglai Island. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finally understood. No matter what, this was a good thing. After we reach the island, why don't we rest on the island for a while? Gao Hanqiu suggested. Chapter 29:34. Young Master One, there's something you don't know. Gao Hanqiu's face revealed a simple and happy smile. This first island is called Monkey Island. There are many golden piebald monkeys living on it. These golden piebald monkeys are best at making wine. Therefore, any cultivator who passes by here will think of a way to get some monkey wine. It's said that the monkey wine is mellow and more delicious than the bejeweled nectar we usually taste. When we came here, my big brother didn't tell us anything. He only told us to remember to collect some monkey wine when we pass by Monkey Island. I wonder if you're interested in Monkey Island? If not, we won't go to the island. Gao Hanqiu looked at the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Their expressions were very clear. If it was just the two of them, they would have already gone to Monkey Island without hesitation. However, they were borrowing the boat of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Therefore, there was no reason to force Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to go with them. I didn't expect this island to be so interesting. I've heard that some monkeys make monkey wine that is extremely mellow. However, it's rare to see it. Since there's a chance now, I naturally want to see it. Xiren was immediately interested. Although his alcohol tolerance wasn't very good, he also liked this wine. It seems that young Master One is also a kindred spirit. Seeing when Xiren agreed, the smiles on Gao Hanqiu's and Xia's faces couldn't help but deepen. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't have any objections. In fact, they had drifted on the sea for so long that they wanted to go ashore. Even if it was just to feel the touch of land, it was very good. These golden piebald monkeys aren't weak. They're around the blue realm. With our strength, it's more than enough to deal with them. However, we still have to be careful when we go to the island. Ever since the benefits of the monkey wine were discovered, people often came to Monkey Island to steal it. Therefore, these golden piebald monkeys have become smarter. They hate people like us who steal their wine. Gao Hanqiu rubbed his head, clearly feeling a little helpless that he had to steal the monkey's wine. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but laugh softly. Looks like these gold essence piebald monkeys are very human-like. I'll really have to experience it later. Soon, the ship docked at Monkey Island. After everyone got off the boat, Xiren stored the boat into his Chinquan bag. The monkeys here were very intelligent. If he left the boat at the shore, it might disappear at any time. As soon as they reached the shore, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others saw a lush scene. The trees here seemed to be particularly dense, and the smell of grass spread out into the nostrils of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, giving them a very familiar smell. The trees here seemed to be fruit trees. Shangguan Yingying looked at the many trees in front of her in surprise. The bright red peaches on the peach trees were very tempting. Xiao He and Xiao Bai casually plucked a few peaches and handed them to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang took the peaches and handed them to Di Beichun and the others. Everyone's eyes lit up when they tasted it. Chapter 29:35. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest who originally had some doubts towards Gao Hanxia and when Xiren's words no longer had any doubts. This place was really a paradise for the gold essence piebald monkeys. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 6 walked up, a sound attracted their attention. Looking carefully, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 6 immediately discovered that there were a few monkeys in front of them. These monkeys were about 1.5 meters tall, and their movements were extremely agile. Their flexibility was no different from a human's. When these monkeys saw Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 6, they bared their teeth and immediately fled towards the back. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the sight of Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 6. These monkeys should have gone back to inform the main group. Gao Hanxia slowly said, "Young Master Gao, do you know where this monkey wine is located?" Xiren asked, although these gold essence piebald monkeys are not very strong, but if the entire island is filled with these monkeys and they all attack together, it won't be easy for them to escape. This monkey wine is located in the center of this monkey island, which is also the nest of this monkey island. In my opinion, why don't you all wait here for us? Third brother and I will take the opportunity to steal the wine and immediately return after we steal the wine. With so many of us going together, I'm afraid that we will alert the enemy. Not only will we not be able to steal the wine, we may also be attacked by the group. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. These gold essence piebald monkeys have already noticed us. If we continue to stay here, won't there be trouble? Gao Hanxia shook his head and said, "Don't worry, these gold essence piebald monkeys generally won't take the initiative to attack people. As long as you all don't do anything else, they will only secretly watch you from here and won't attack." When these words were said, Bailey Hongzhuang's group revealed a hesitant expression. These so-called gold essence piebald monkeys were a species unique to Penglai Island. They had never come into contact with them before. Therefore, they didn't know much about their temperament. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 didn't seem to believe him, Gao Hanxia continued, "Why don't we all wait here together? In a while, you all will find out." Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 didn't reject Gao Hanxia's suggestion. The group immediately sat down on the spot. Not long after, they saw a group of gold essence piebald monkeys appear. They all stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's group, but didn't go near them, but didn't move closer, and at the same time picked up another rock to throw a rock. Xiren. The monkey was being hit. Xiren caught the rock with one hand and didn't get hit. The monkey anxiously scratched its ears and head. It had an unwilling look on its face. Seeing this, Xiren couldn't help but chuckle, revealing his white and neat teeth. These monkeys are really fun. Their vengeful nature isn't small. These gold essence piebald monkeys are very timid. As long as you don't kill them, they won't attack. Gao Hanxia said, "It seems like that is the case." Di Baichen nodded. After observing for a while, he also discovered the characteristics of these gold essence piebald monkeys. Chapter 29:36. Young Master Gao, it's better if you all go. We'll wait for you here. Di Baichen slowly said, "With so many of us moving together, I'm afraid it won't be easy to steal the wine. Indeed, the fewer people going, the better." Gao Hanxia nodded and said to Gao Hanxia, "Third brother, why don't you wait for me here? I'll come back after stealing the wine. Won't it be dangerous for you to go alone? No, this monkey island is only so big. If I encounter any danger, it won't be too late for you all to come and help. It's better for me to move alone." Gao Hanxia thought for a moment and said, "All right then." Gao Hanxia took the lead and left. Just as he said, his departure didn't attract too much attention from the gold essence piebald monkeys. These monkeys still focused their attention on Di Baichen's group of 5. Xiaohei and Xiao Bai were happily picking peaches. These monkeys tasted very good. Recently, they had been sitting on the boat and eating dry rations. They didn't get to eat any fresh fruits. Now that they came to this monkey island, it wasn't in their nature to not take some peaches. When the gold essence piebald monkeys saw Xiao He and Xiao by unscrupulously picking peaches, they were obviously very unhappy. However, their timid nature made them afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang's group. Therefore, they could only watch from the side and grit their teeth. Bailey Hongzhuang's group rarely had a chance to relax. At this moment, they were relaxed and basking in the sun. When they were drifting on the sea, they had to constantly be vigilant of the demon beasts that could sneak attack them at any time. Therefore, their mental strength had to be tense at all times. Although there were many gold essence piebald monkeys around them, they didn't give them any pressure. Therefore, this was their most relaxed moment so far. Gao Hanxiu wasn't as good at talking as Gao Hanxia. Therefore, he just sat quietly and looked behind from time to time, as if he was very worried about Gao Hanxia's situation. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others waited for a while, Gao Hanxia finally returned with a smile on his face. It looks like young Master Gao is returning from a rewarding journey. When Ziren couldn't help but tease when he saw the smile on Gao Hanxia's face. Gao Hanxia laughed heartily. It's all thanks to you guys attracting the attention of the metal essence piebald monkeys. Although these monkeys are smart, they can't be compared to humans. I've obtained quite a bit of monkey wine. Don't worry, I won't take it all for myself. Since we've obtained it, let's set off. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. The monkey wine is gone. The golden piebald monkeys should find out soon, right? Gao Hanxiao waved his hand and said, There's no hurry. Why don't we go to the shore? I caught a few birds just now, and we've been eating rations for so many days. Why don't we eat some game? If the metal essence piebald monkeys really discover us, it won't be too late for us to leave. These monkeys won't leave this island. Game to eat? That's great. Shang Waningying was pleasantly surprised. During this period of time, she was really sick of eating rations. Young Master Gao is really amazing. While stealing the monkey wine, you can also hunt for game. Truly amazing. Di Beichen's voice was calm, but a complicated light flashed through the depths of his eyes. Chapter 29:37. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three started a fire not far from the shore, while Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu went to the beach to clean up the food. However, after waiting for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not see Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu return. What were they doing? Why haven't they returned after so long? They couldn't have met with danger, right? When Ziren could not help but stand up with a complicated expression on his face. I'll go take a look. Di Beichen waved his hand and said, If we're going to act, then let's act together. We'll go together. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were about to look for Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxia, the gold essence piebald monkeys, which had been very gentle all this time, suddenly became violent. Pairs of eyes turned blood red, and they attacked Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three in a frenzy. Looking at this sudden change, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all stunned, but they still took out their weapons for the first time. The strength of the gold essence piebald monkeys was equivalent to a level 8 blue realm monster. With the cultivation of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, it was not difficult to deal with them. However, there were more than a few hundred of them. At a glance, the surroundings were densely packed with fist force gold essence piebald monkeys. This entire island was the gathering place of the gold essence piebald monkeys. Even if they had reached level 3 purple realm, being surrounded by so many gold essence piebald monkeys was an extremely frightening thing. Damn it, why did these gold essence piebald monkeys suddenly go crazy? When Ziren's face was full of confusion. The gold essence piebald monkeys were so docile before and did not attack at all. Why did the gold essence piebald monkeys treat them as irreconcilable enemies in such a short period of time? I'm afraid we've fallen into a trap. Di Beichen's face darkened in an instant, and his eyes were filled with haze. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Ziren's face also turned ugly. You mean this is the doing of Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxia? Ever since we came to this monkey island, the two of them always wanted to take the opportunity to leave our sight. Previously, they only left Gao Hanxiu behind to avoid our suspicions. After we let down our guard, they left again, and we didn't take it to heart. These gold essence piebald monkeys suddenly becoming like this must be related to them. I just don't know how they did it. Di Beichen's brows wrinkled. He had already felt that something was wrong before, but he was not sure, so he did not say anything. Now it seemed that his hunch was not wrong. These two damn people, they really aren't anything good. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of indignation. We helped them with good intentions, but we didn't expect them to bite the hand that fed them. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a burst of anger, but her pair of bright black eyes were calm. We have to think of a way to get out of here quickly. There are just too many of these gold essence piebald monkeys. It's impossible to kill them all first. These monkeys are too fast. We can only kill our way out first. Once we get on the boat, we'll be safe. Xiren said. Di Beichen shook his head. I'm afraid the situation is not that simple. If it was really that easy to leave, Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxia would not have let us stay so close to the shore. They must be certain that we won't be able to leave. Chapter 2938. If I'm not wrong, they should be hiding on this monkey island and are watching a good show right now. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a malicious and ruthless light. Gao Hanxia and his brother had really taught them a lesson that left a deep impression on them. These two fellows first put on a harmless and honest appearance, and they could be said to have told them everything they knew. Once they'd obtained enough trust from them, they did this now. It was really a good psychological attack. These two fellows are really too despicable. Shangguan Yingying said furiously. If I see them again, I'll definitely take their lives with my own hands. As the wife of the Cloud Sword Sect's junior sectmaster, no one dared to harm her. Thus, she was extremely furious when she encountered this kind of thing, and her beautiful face was dyed red with anger. The most important thing now is how we're going to escape from the siege of these gold essence piebald monkeys. If we can't escape quickly, we can only be exhausted to death here. Even if we aren't exhausted to death by the gold essence piebald monkeys, Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu are still waiting at the side. If we're in our peak condition, we still have a chance to deal with the two of them. But once we're in a weakened state, it'll be extremely difficult to win against two 5th-level Purple Realm cultivators in their peak condition. Di Beichen calmly and rationally analyzed the situation before him. The opponent's move was really formidable, and they were simply in an invincible position. It's useless to think so much now. Let's deal with these gold essence piebald monkeys first. Xiren shouted loudly, then raised his weapon and attacked the gold essence piebald monkeys before him. With so many monkeys surrounding him, it was a hair-raising feeling. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 3 wasn't slow in the slightest, and a gold essence piebald monkey would definitely lose its life with every swing of their sword. Fortunately, these gold essence piebald monkeys weren't at the Purple Thistle Realm. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 would really be helpless. However, even if it was only a Blue Realm cultivator, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had to use all their strength to kill it as soon as possible. Therefore, the consumption of yuan qi was also very large. The 3 beasts also joined the battle at the first moment. Their attack power was also very strong, especially the white lion. Its claws and teeth were the sharpest weapons. Compared to the consumption of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, the consumption of the 3 beasties was much lower. Bailey Hongzhuang and the 3 beasts formed a circle with their backs against each other. Their main target was Di Beichen, and they intended to approach the coast. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 got closer to the coast, they realized that these gold essence piebald monkeys seemed to have seen through their plan. Therefore, more and more of them gathered by the coast, and some even directly entered the water. Obviously, they were determined not to let Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 leave. When he saw this scene, when Xiren secretly spat, "These damnable fellows. They lied to us and said that this group of gold essence piebald monkeys wouldn't leave the monkey island. But from what I see, These fellows are clearly extremely skilled in swimming. In this way, even if they walked to the coast, it would be impossible for them to row a boat and leave with the obstruction of these monkeys. Moreover, there were so many uncertain dangers at the bottom of the sea. Chapter 29:39. Then what should we do? Shang Yingning couldn't help but panic. Many gold essence piebald monkeys had already fallen under their feet, but the remaining gold essence piebald monkeys were still densely packed together. The number of gold essence piebald monkeys living on this island simply exceeded their expectations. More than half of the yuan li in their bodies had already been consumed. If this continued, sooner or later they would be defeated by the group of gold essence piebald monkeys due to exhaustion. Bailey Hongzhuang's line of sight turned, and not only did she notice the corpse of a gold essence piebald monkey on the riverbank. Look, isn't that corpse very different? After Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, everyone also took the opportunity to look at the riverbank while fighting. Only then did they discover that a gold essence piebald monkey had already been disemboweled at some unknown time on the riverbank. However, this gold essence piebald monkey was completely different from the gold essence piebald monkeys they had seen before. The other gold essence piebald monkeys were all brown, but this one was bright red. This gold essence piebald monkey shouldn't be the leader, right? Shang Yingning was speechless. The ranks of demonic beasts were clearly separated. Whenever there was a demonic beast that was different from the others, its identity would usually be the leader. Looks like the wild game that Gao Hanxia said he found should be this guy. No wonder these gold essence piebald monkeys would suddenly become so crazy. Di Beichen's voice was slightly heavy. A trace of sharpness flashed past his pitch-black deep eyes. For a moment, everyone had a feeling that they had previously thought of things too simply. They originally thought that Gao Hanxia duo wouldn't be able to play any tricks under their watch. They didn't expect that the other party had actually arranged everything so seamlessly. Speaking of which, the reason why they had fallen into this situation, on one hand, was because they had too little understanding of Penglai Island. On the other hand, it was also because of their negligence. The feeling of exhaustion gradually came over. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but slow down their speed of killing the demonic beasts. However, the gold essence piebald monkeys had already killed until their eyes turned red. They had completely regarded them as an irreconcilable enemy. Dauntlessly rushing forward wave after wave made them feel very helpless. We can't continue like this. Everyone could not help but feel anxious in their hearts. If this continued, they would only be exhausted to death. Not far away, Gao Hanxiao and Gao Hanxiu were watching the show with smiles on their faces. Second brother, they can't hold on much longer. Gao Hanxiu's face was full of smiles. Although they were very vigilant along the way, they still fell for our trick. The older the ginger, the spicier it is, haha. Gao Hanxia's lips curled into a triumphant smile. These guys are young, and this is the first time they have come to Penglai Island. I can only say that they are unlucky. They will lose their lives here before they even arrive. However, judging from the things on their bodies, they should not be ordinary people. The things in their chinquan bags must be very rich. Speaking of which, we brothers are really lucky this time. Second brother, do you know what species those 3 contracted beasts are? His battle prowess is so powerful, it's really shocking. Gao Hanxiu's gaze landed on the 3 beasts. He had already noticed the 3 beasts when he was dealing with the aquamarine thornfish. If he could have such beasts, they would be a great help to him. Chapter 29:40. I can only say that these guys have an extraordinary background. Their cultivation hasn't even reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm, yet they dared to come to Penglai Island. It's really strange, but let's get rid of them here as soon as possible. This way, no one will know and we won't have to worry about revenge. Just that ship alone is worth tens of thousands of gold. Gao Hanxia's eyes lit up. When he encountered the blue thorns, he only felt that he was unlucky. He didn't expect that there would be a silver lining. This was a good thing that fell from the sky. Gao Hanshio smiled and nodded. It's not easy to meet such a fat sheep. The heavens are really good to us. Big brother, it's fine if those two brats die, but those two beauties are really beautiful. Are we just going to let them die like this? Gao Hanshio's eyes were filled with a trace of covetousness. As soon as he saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying, he couldn't help but have such thoughts in his mind. Those two were the best of the best. Even for the two of them, they had never seen such extreme beauties before. It would be a pity if they just watched them die like this. Listening to Gao Hanshio's words, Gao Hanshio couldn't help but look at Gao Hanshio and said, "Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? We'll save those two beauties later, huh?" As soon as these words came out, Gao Hanshio's eyes suddenly became brighter. He couldn't help but rub his hands together, and his heart was filled with excitement. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others might not be able to hold on for long, Gao Hanshio and Gao Hanshio moved closer. They crossed their arms in front of their chests and looked like they were watching a good show. Gao Hanshio, you two despicable and shameless guys. Xiren's sharp eyes noticed the two guys approaching and couldn't help but curse angrily. In the face of Xiren's anger, the smiles on Gao Hanshio and Gao Hanshio's faces became wider. With your strength, going to Pengla Island is just going to die. You even have to sacrifice two beauties. Why don't we send you on your way? The sooner you die, the sooner you can reincarnate. Gao Hanshio and Gao Hanshio looked at each other and laughed even more heartily. How could they not be happy when such a good thing fell on their heads? Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' expressions turned even uglier when they heard Gao Hanshio and his brother's words. Di Beichen and Xiren's eyes flashed with killing intent. These two damn bastards actually dared to covet their women? You guys are shameless. Shangwan Yingying was so angry that her face turned red. How could such shameless words come out of the other party's mouth? It was a great insult. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were sharp and cold as she looked at the other party. Scum like you. I'm afraid you're not qualified? Oh. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was suspicious of them, Gao Hanshio couldn't help but say, "Beauty, don't worry. Soon I will let you know how brave we are, haha." In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. Di Beichen nodded to Bailey Hongzhuang without a trace, and Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. Chapter 2941. At the same time, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying had both consumed a pill, their eyes were gloomy and fierce as they stared at Gao Hanshio and Shangwan Yingying. Suddenly smelling a strange fragrance, Gao Hanshio and Gao Hanshio could not help but look at each other. Their eyes were filled with suspicion as if something was amiss. However, what happened next completely shocked the two of them. Within their line of sight, the gold essence piebald monkeys who had been attacking Bailey Hongzhuang and the others suddenly seemed to have gone mad and began to kill each other. After the gold essence piebald monkeys had killed each other, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had easily retreated from the encirclement. At this moment, their faces were gloomy as they stared at Gao Hanshio and Shangwan Yingying. This sudden turn of events had clearly exceeded Gao Hanshio and Shangwan Yingying's expectations. When the two of them saw this, their minds were momentarily unable to process the situation. They could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had managed to break through a situation where victory was within their grasp in such a short time. You know how to use poison? Gao Hanshio's eyes instantly widened as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. His pale face was filled with disbelief. Unfortunately, I am a poison master. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was calm and indifferent, but it was like a blow to Gao Hanshio and Shangwan Yingying's heads. Under this kind of situation where they were surrounded, any cultivator would be helpless. However, there was one kind of person who was an exception, and that was a poison master. Poison masters were least afraid of using a sea of people because their poison did not care about the number of people. It had the same lethality and disregarded everything. They had never thought that there would be a poison master among Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. You've already seen through our actions? Gao Hanshio asked in disbelief. Do you really think that your acting skills are outstanding? If we only had your intelligence, we would have died many times over. When Zyron's handsome and refined face curled into a playful smile. They were not flowers in a greenhouse. During their years of training in the outside world, they had experienced various schemes and schemes. Even though Gao Hanxia and Shangwan Yingying's acting skills were not bad, to them, apart from themselves, they would not believe everything said by anyone else. Therefore, they had never let down their guard. Then why were you surrounded previously? Gao Hanxia lost his voice, and his voice suddenly became sharper. Di Beichen looked at him coldly and said, I want to see what kind of tricks you are playing. If we don't cooperate with the play that you have painstakingly put on, wouldn't that disappoint you? As soon as these words came out, Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them from head to toe. They couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spine. They thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were young, and their life experience was certainly not rich enough. Their experience in Jianghu was also not enough, so they had such thoughts. Who would have thought that not only were the four of them not inexperienced, but on the contrary, they looked like they were extremely experienced. You're only at the 3rd level of the Purple Realm. You're no match for us brothers. Gao Hanxiao regained his senses after a short moment of shock. Since things had developed to this point, there was no hope for them to effortlessly get rid of the other party. However, they still had a higher chance of winning in a direct confrontation. Chapter 2942. Hearing Gao Hanxiao's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two smiled tacitly at the same time. Exhaustion was indeed a situation that no one could avoid. However, their physical fitness was also far from what ordinary cultivators could compare to. After a long period of high-intensity battles, their endurance had long been imperceptibly improved. Their previous anxiousness and exhaustion were just a pretense to deceive Gao Hanxia and his brother. In reality, the previous battle did not cause them to fall into such a state. Bailey Hongzhuang, Deep Beichan, and the three beasties often cultivated in the desert world. Once the demonic beasts in the desert world appeared, they did not care whether they were exhausted or not. Instead, they were all creatures with rough skin and thick flesh that could take a beating. The physical strength and energy required to deal with them were much more than ordinary demonic beasts. After such a long time, they had long been used to it. Although Zyron and Shangwan Yingying did not have the opportunity to train like Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they had some understanding of Sect Master Wen's character. Normally, his requirements for Wen Zyron and Shangwan Yingying would not be low. Cut the crap, do it. A cold, killing intent flashed in Di Beichen's eyes that were as deep as an ancient well. He was too lazy to waste his breath on these two fellows. In reality, from the moment these two fellows dared to have fantasies about Bailey Hongzhuang that they should not have, the killing intent in his heart had already begun to boil. When Zyron nodded, a grim expression surfaced on his elegant and broad face. Don't be fooled by his usual mischievous face. Shangwan Yingying was his reverse scale. These two damn fellows, he must personally wring their necks. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying followed closely behind, killing intent boiling in their eyes. The anger from before had completely exploded at this moment. When Gao Hanxia and Shangwan Yingying saw that Di Beichen's group of four, whose strength could not be compared to theirs, actually dared to take the initiative to challenge them, an expression of disbelief appeared on their faces. Could it be that these fellows were really that confident in their strength? At the level of the Purple Realm, the gap between two levels was not ordinary. Di Beichen's mind moved, and the blood aura field instantly erupted. A terrifying killing intent mixed with a strong smell of blood swept out with him as the center. The aura that was originally at the 3rd level of the Purple Realm directly rose to the 5th level of the Purple Realm at this moment. Seeing this scene, Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu could not help but be dumbfounded. Blood Aura Field. You are actually the inheritor of the Blood Aura Tower. Gao Hanxia exclaimed. Looking at Di Beichen, it was as if he had seen a ghost. He had gone to Punlai Island and was very familiar with the power of the blood chi field. However, he had never thought that the young man in front of him, who he thought would be easy to deal with, was actually the inheritor of the blood chi field. Yosamai's eyes see. After he's words as just he did directly, as he to do the attack twos to attack. Of his yai. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang's blood aura field also erupted at the first moment. Ending the battle quickly was the best way. Earlier, when they fought with the aquamarine thorns, they already had a certain understanding of the strength of Gao Hanxia and his brother. Chapter 2943. It was because of this that they didn't mind being on the same boat as Gao Hanxia and his brother. The other party had been trying to deceive them, so how could they not be prepared? After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was also an inheritor of the blood aura, Gao Hanxia and his brother were completely dumbfounded. The inheritance of the blood aura was something that only geniuses among geniuses could obtain. Normally, they could only fantasize about it. They knew very well that it was impossible for them to obtain such an inheritance. However, they had never seen an inheritor of the blood aura before. They didn't expect that two of them would appear. At this moment, they finally understood why Bailey Hongzhuang and the others dared to come to Punlai Island, even though their cultivation hadn't reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm. It turned out that they had such confidence. The combat power of an inheritor of the blood aura could no longer be judged simply by their cultivation. They often had the ability to fight above their level. It seemed that the pie in the sky that they thought was falling from the sky wasn't the case at all. It was just that they had thought too simply. "Third brother, let's fight," Gao Hanxia shouted. They had no way out now. If they didn't kill the other party, only death would await them. Gao Hanxia nodded. The elemental energy in his body burst out in an instant. He didn't dare to leave any leeway. If they weren't careful, the brothers could very well lose their lives here. Bang, bang, bang. Vigorous elemental energy swept across the monkey island. Martial arts techniques collided continuously. The destructive power was extremely shocking. However, the gold essence-spotted monkeys had already killed each other to the point that they couldn't differentiate between them. Therefore, they didn't know what was happening outside. The three beasties weren't idle either. Although their cultivation wasn't as high as Gao Hanxia and Wen Xinbei, they had the advantage in numbers. When they joined forces, even Gao Hanxia and Wen Xinbei felt a headache. However, Gao Hanxia and Wen Xinbei were still cultivators of the 5th level of the Purple Realm. The elemental energy in their bodies was extremely abundant. At this moment, their combat power was extremely terrifying. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out. Di Beichun and Xiren both took 2 steps back, while Gao Hanxia's body flew backward. Ta-ta-ta! Gao Hanxia's feet continuously stepped on the ground. The ground under his feet cracked inch by inch, leaving behind spiderweb-like cracks. In the end, he leaned against a peach tree to stabilize his body. His expression became extremely ugly. His originally rosy face had become pale, as the blood had faded. His gaze towards Di Beichun and Xiren was filled with fear. Just as he wanted to speak, Gao Hanxia's as he spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with his internal organs. He's a zest. Seeing this, Di Beichun raised his eyebrows, and when Xiren's lips curled into a smile. The two did not hesitate to attack Gao Hanxia again, taking his. To kill him, Gao Hanxia's eyes flashed with a hint of panic. For a moment, he didn't have the heart to fight and chose to escape. His injuries were already extremely serious. If he were to endure another blow, his little life would be completely lost. Di Beichun and Xiren naturally wouldn't let him do as he wished. They immediately chased after him, and 2 attacks lingered around him. Bang! Chapter 2944. Bailey Hongzhuang, Shangwan Yingying, and the 3 beasties' target was Gao Xiaqiu. As Gao Hanxia's younger brother, Gao Xiaqiu's strength was weaker than Gao Hanxia's. Although Gao Hanxiu's explosive fighting strength was very shocking when he was in danger, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying's combined fighting strength was also very good. In addition to the three beasties' assistants, it wasn't difficult for them to deal with Gao Hanxiu. In fact, even if Bailey Hongzhuang were to face Gao Hanxiu alone, she wouldn't be afraid. What's more, he had so many helpers now. It would be a piece of cake to deal with them. Di Beichen and Wen Ziren slowly walked towards Gao Hanxia, who was lying on the ground, unable to get up. Gao Hanxia had underestimated them, thinking that they were only ordinary third-level Purple Realm cultivators. In fact, each of them had the ability to fight above their level. You guys don't come over." Gao Hanxia's eyes flashed with deep panic, and his voice was trembling. It was a stark contrast to the proud smile from before. "I heard that you two brothers have designs on our women." Ziren's lips curled slightly, and his low and hoarse voice quietly sounded in Gao Hanxia's ears. But Gao Hanxia couldn't help but shiver. Whether it was Di Beichun or Wen Ziren, their gazes were as sharp as knives, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. In the next moment, the sound of someone falling to the ground rang out beside Gao Hanxia, stirring up a cloud of dust. Looking carefully, Gao Hanxia realized that the person who had fallen beside him was none other than his third brother, Gao Hanxiu. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying immediately came to Di Beichen's side. Looking at the Gao brothers who had lost their fighting strength, a smile bloomed on their pretty faces. Shangguan Yingying clapped her hands. "These two fellows were so arrogant before, and I thought they were very powerful. Quickly get rid of them, and let's continue on our way. We don't have to waste any more time here." "Since it's Madame's order, there's naturally no problem." Ziren immediately nodded, looking as if he was obeying her orders. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words, Gao Hanxia and Shangguan Yingying felt a chill in their hearts and hurriedly said, "Madam, please be magnanimous and spare us this time." As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but chuckle. Compared to the previous clamor of Gao Hanxia and his brother, this kind of begging for mercy at the moment was really a bit ironic. However, if they really believed their words, they would be stupid. These words, do you believe your own words? Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had made up their minds to not let them go, the two of them were extremely anxious. They had painstakingly cultivated to their current level with great difficulty. They hadn't even had the time to enjoy their lives, yet they were going to lose their lives just like that. It was really too unreconciled to accept this. "You can't kill us." Gao Hanxia calmed down and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three with a burning gaze. "My big brother left a magic weapon on us. If you dare to kill us, my big brother will never let you go. If you go to Penglai Island, you'll also die. You'll definitely be hunted down by my big brother. Why don't you let us go, and we'll write off all our grievances? How about it?" Chapter 2945. There were indeed some methods in this world. After a cultivator had fallen, they would send a video of their death back to their family, so that they would know who had killed them. That way, their family would be able to avenge them. However, the cost of creating such a video was not small. Therefore, although it existed, it was rarely seen on a daily basis. They never thought that the Gao brothers would have such a thing on them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not doubt this. Along the way, although the Gao brothers had deceived them quite a bit, they were all half-truths. They believed that Gao Hanxian was on Penglai Island, and his position should be quite high. From what they had heard, Gao Hanxian treated his two younger brothers very well. Therefore, it was not strange for them to have such a thing on them. Once they arrived on Penglai Island, it would be very troublesome if they were to be hunted down by Gao Hanxian. When Gao Hanxia and the other two saw the hesitation on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces, they were overjoyed. It seemed that their words had made the other party wary. "My big brother has been on Penglai Island for many years, and his influence is not small. I'm afraid that you'll be targeted as soon as you arrive on Penglai Island." The fear on Gao Hanqiu's face had disappeared. At this moment, he was certain that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three would not dare to make a move. Instead, he began to act recklessly. In this world, the most important thing was power. Gao Hanquan's existence was destined to be feared. I see that you're getting cockier and cockier. When he saw the smug look on Gao Hanqiu's face again, Xiren's displeasure exploded. In the next second, his sharp sword pierced Gao Hanqiu's chest without hesitation. You're so cocky because I said you were fat. I hate it when people act arrogantly in front of me. If he wanted to be arrogant, he would only be arrogant in front of others. Gao Hanqia could not help but be dumbfounded. Just a second ago, he had seen Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's hesitation. Just because of his third brother's smug look, Xiren had directly killed his third brother? What happened to the promised turnaround? He was completely out of character. Since we've already killed him, his elder brother should already know that Gao Hanqiu was killed by us. Let's just kill them all. Di Beichen's voice was cold, and the sharp sword in his hand had already turned towards Gao Hanqia. Hearing this, Gao Hanqia could not help but shudder in his heart. He hurriedly said, No, don't kill me. I could talk to my big brother and ask him not to be calculative. However, Di Beichen simply ignored Gao Hanqiu's words. The sword in his hand had already pierced down. Gao Hanqiu's eyes were wide open as he stared at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. In his mind, he kept thinking that if his third brother hadn't been so complacent, would the situation have been different? However, he could only go to the netherworld to find the answer. These two fellows are really stupid. I teased them, and they really thought they had a chance to live. When Xiren wiped off the blood on his sword and put it back into the scabbard, his lips curled into a playful smile. If you cut the grass without removing the roots, it will grow again when the spring breeze blows. This was a famous saying that they had kept in mind since they were young. Chapter 2946. At the same time, a middle-aged man on Penglai Island was staring at the scene in front of him. He was waiting for his two younger brothers to come to Penglai Island to help him and become his right and left arms. However, they were killed on their way to Penglai Island. His eyes turned blood red in an instant, and the veins on his temples bulged rapidly. The teacup in his hand was crushed into powder by him. These four bastards, he would definitely tear them into pieces with his own hands. Xiren and Di Beichen reached out and took Gao Hanqia and his brother's Chinquan pouch. Just as they were about to check if there was anything useful inside, a scene suddenly appeared in front of their eyes. It was a face that looked very similar to Gao Hanqia and his brother. At this moment, his eyes were burning with rage. If he could erupt, he would have burned Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three into ashes. Unfortunately, he could only leave behind an image and could not do anything to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The four of you, as long as you dare to step into Penglai Island, I will make sure you die with my brother. A loud and murderous voice rang in the ears of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. The image then disappeared. Looking at the murderous gaze in the image, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could not help but look at each other. Sure enough, Gao Hanqia and his brother were not lying. Gao Hanqiu has already remembered the four of us. It seems that we have already set up a very strong enemy before we even arrived at Penglai Island. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. Her eyes were as calm as water, but there was no fear. We have to be more careful when we reach Penglai Island. With the other party's methods, it should be very easy for them to find new cultivators. Di Beichen's handsome face flashed with a trace of seriousness. His voice was low and cautious. Before they understood Penglai Island, everything was unknown. They had to be more careful. When the time comes, we'll disguise ourselves first. It's best if we split into two groups to go ashore, or to dress up as men. This way, it won't be easy for Gao Hanqiu to confirm that it's us. Bailey Hongzhuang's inky black phoenix eyes rippled with confidence. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't afraid of Gao Hanqiu's discovery was because they could change their appearances. With her disguise technique, ordinary people would not be able to see through her. Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded. This was the only method they could use for now. Don't worry. There are so many powerful people on Penglai Island. I don't believe that Gao Han Chun can cover the sky with one hand. Maybe we are lucky. Shangguan Yingying smiled slightly, and a joke dispelled the originally slightly heavy atmosphere. Yingying is right. Let's take a look at what's inside this Cosmos sack. It might be of some help to us. When Xiren was obviously an optimist. As long as the situation did not develop to a point where they could not accept it, everything was still hopeful. Opening the Cosmos sack, everyone could not help but feel that Gao Hanxia and his brother were quite wealthy. There were quite a lot of elixirs and money inside. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not pay much attention to these and kept it. What is this? Xiren took out a few crystal clear stones from the Cosmos sack. The size of these stones were not very regular, but there was a strong fluctuation of elemental energy on them. Chapter 29:47. Penglai Island really has a lot of new things. I'm already very interested even before reaching Penglai Island. Xiren's handsome face revealed a look of anticipation. No wonder his family's old man kept asking him to come to Penglai Island. It seemed that this place was really a new world. If he could make a name for himself on Penglai Island, it would be really good. There really is monkey wine. They did not lie to us about this. Shangguan Yingying said in surprise. There were several large wine jars placed inside the Chinquan bag. Even though they were sealed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could still smell the rich wine fragrance. Just by smelling it, I can tell that it is good stuff. Di Beichen's lips slightly lifted. He had been tasting wine with his master for so many years. Just by smelling it, he could tell that this wine was not ordinary. The wine brewed by these golden piebald monkeys was indeed excellent. It must be one of the best wines in the entire Shengxian continent. After carefully looking at the various things inside, most of them were ordinary things. However, there were two invitation letters that attracted the attention of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Auction invitation letter? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the words written on the gilded invitation letter. Her eyes suddenly brightened. They had specially come to Penglai Island this time to go to the auction. They did not expect the Gao Hanxia brothers to have an invitation letter to the auction. From the looks of it, I am afraid that the auction on Penglai Island is not something that just anyone can attend. Only people who have an invitation letter can enter. Di Beichen looked at the invitation letter in his hand. There were small words written on it. An invitation letter could only bring one more person. It was just right that the four of them had two invitation letters. No matter what, this is good news. We have to keep it well. When Xiren was all smiles. Although they had been schemed against, they were still very satisfied with their gains overall. We've been delayed here for so long. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Originally, the monkey island was filled with the fragrance of peaches. It was very pleasant to smell, but now was completely covered by the smell of blood. It was not a pleasant smell at all. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichin and the other two nodded and walked towards the shore together. The Metal Fairy's piebald monkeys, who were originally in a frenzy, were now completely exhausted. One by one, they fainted. However, the number of corpses on the ground was still shocking. Hongzhuang, are these gold essence-spotted monkeys all dead? Shangguan Yingying looked at the scene in front of her and sighed. In fact, these gold essence piebald monkeys were very cowardly. If they had not been used by Gao Hanxia, they would not have fallen to such a state. A monkey that knew how to brew wine was very interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. The casualties are not small. However, they are not extinct. Don't worry, the reproduction of demon beasts has always been very scary. Humans and demon beasts have been in a state of confrontation for so many years. The advantage of humans was their intelligence, while the advantage of demon beasts was their reproduction. As long as they were not extinct, it was only a matter of time before they could develop again. So that's how it is. Shangguan Yingying smiled faintly. Let's go. Xiren waved his hand, and the boat appeared on the sea. Chapter 2948. After drifting on the sea for another 3 days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three suddenly realized that there was a faint golden barrier in front of them. The barrier was transparent, and if it weren't for the golden sunlight reflecting off it, it wouldn't have been discovered at all. Taking a closer look, everyone realized that the size of the barrier was simply astonishing. Looking around, the entire sea seemed to be divided into two by the barrier. No matter if it was the left or the right, they couldn't see the end of it. This barrier should be the isolation barrier of Penglai Island. Di Beichen looked at the incomparably shocking barrier in front of him. His heart was also filled with shock. Everyone was familiar with the barrier, especially on the battle stage. However, such a huge barrier was truly shocking. At the very least, they had never heard of such a thing. When Zyra nodded, my old man said that when we're about to reach Penglai Island, we'll pass through a barrier. Only those who have reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm, or those who have other methods, can pass through it. If you don't meet the requirements, you won't be able to pass through this barrier no matter what. Now, I'm still wondering what this barrier looks like. Now that I've seen it, I've really learned something new. Master, I have a feeling that the people on Penglai Island aren't simple. To be able to set up such a perverted barrier, how strong must they be? Xiao He was secretly speechless. Both of its hands were constantly scratching its white fur. Before they even reached Penglai Island, they were already shocked by the various foundations of Penglai Island. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Penglai Island is indeed not to be underestimated. We just need to be more careful. In a place like this, the cultivation resources and other things are often incomparable to other places. Once a cultivator reaches the Purple Realm, their cultivation speed will greatly decrease. I think that only by going to a place like this can we increase our cultivation faster. Where there were opportunities, there were always risks. This was a common understanding among all of them. Compared to encountering danger, stagnation was the scariest. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three arrived in front of the barrier. Reaching out their hands to touch it, everyone realized that the barrier was like a wall with a real touch. No matter how hard they tried, the barrier didn't react at all. After carefully sensing it, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were able to determine that the barrier was able to withstand a shocking amount of power. Even if a 9th-level Purple Realm cultivator were to attack it, it would not be affected at all. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and nodded. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen activated their blood aura fields at almost the same time, and a tyrannical power instantly erupted. The two of them were not even at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, so the only way they could enter the barrier was by relying on the blood aura field. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shi Feng displayed their blood aura fields, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised to discover that ripples had appeared on the previously immovable barrier. It was as if the barrier had turned into mist. Bailey Hongzhuang tried to take a step forward. Then, she passed through the barrier and appeared on the other side. Chapter 2949. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's dark eyes, like black diamonds, could not help but flash with a touch of amazement. The setup of this barrier was really amazing, and the perception was so obvious. They had just used the blood chi field, and everything went smoothly. On the other side, when Zyron and Shangwan Yingying took out a hexagonal token from their Chinquan bag, after they injected their Yuan Qi into the token, a bright golden light bloomed from the token. The golden energy seemed to have merged with the barrier, and ripples spread out on the barrier. At the same time, when Zyron and Shangwan Yingying also successfully passed through the barrier, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at Shangwan Yingying's strange token and method, and a hint of surprise appeared in their eyes, but they didn't ask. Everyone had their own secrets, even if they were partners in life and death. Wanting to know all the methods of the other was never a wise move. After when Zyron successfully passed through, he also breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, my old man didn't lie to me. Otherwise, if we were blocked here, wouldn't I be angered to death? Di Beichen's lips curled into a smile. Although Sect Master one doesn't like to talk on weekdays, what he says is never false. Zyra nodded and said, "That's true. After we pass through this barrier, we should be able to reach Penglai Island soon. It seems like we have to start preparing." When these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces simultaneously showed a heavy expression. It would be fine if they didn't have any opponents, but according to their estimates, Gao Hanshun had been waiting for them to appear. Gao Hanshun probably knew how long it would take to reach Penglai Island from Monkey Island. They were most worried that once they reached Penglai Island, they would be targeted by Gao Hanshun. That would be really troublesome. After the boat drifted for 6 hours, an island slowly appeared in the sight of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. This island was undoubtedly much larger than the Monkey Island they had seen before. It was at least several times larger than the Monkey Island they had seen before. Looking at the island from afar, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's eyes lit up, and a trace of excitement appeared in their hearts. After drifting on the sea for so long, we finally see the true face of Penglai Island. It's hidden too well. If we weren't sure that it was here, we wouldn't have been able to persevere all the way here. Zyron shook his head. Previously, they were wondering why the ordinary people of Shengxian continent had never discovered Penglai Island. As a matter of fact, after drifting on the sea for nearly a month, as long as one wasn't stupid, they wouldn't have the sudden idea to attempt such a thing. I really miss the feeling of having my feet on the ground. I really want to go ashore as soon as possible. Shangguan Yingying had a joyful smile on her lips. Her eyes were as bright as the stars. Obviously, she was full of hope for Penglai Island. Di Beichen looked at the sky and said, "In my opinion, we should wait until the night is dark before going ashore." "It's late at night." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "It's best if we split into 2 groups. That way, the target will be smaller." Chapter 2950. However, the appearance of 4 people together would inevitably arouse suspicion. After all, there were too few newcomers appearing every day. As long as it was confirmed that it was a team of 4, it would not be far from the truth. Then you and Beichan will be in a team, and I will be in a team with Ying. We will act separately at night, and meet up again when we reach the island? When Zyron suggested. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head lightly. Her originally beautiful face had disappeared and was replaced by a young man of about 25 years old. His appearance could only be said to be delicate and pretty, but not very eye-catching. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun and Zyron had also concealed their usual handsome appearance and changed into an ordinary appearance. At least, it would not be unforgettable and leave a deep impression on others. Shangguan Yingying did not disguise herself as a woman. She was still dressed as a woman, and her appearance had also become delicate and pretty, giving off the feeling of a pretty girl from a humble family. The 4 of them had changed from the extremely eye-catching team of 2 men and 2 women to an ordinary team of 3 men and 1 woman. They believed that as long as Gao Hanshun did not have any special methods, it would be impossible for him to recognize the 4 of them. The night gradually thickened, and when the surroundings were completely dark, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 separated into 2 groups and rowed their boats to the shore. Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind Di Beichen. Now that Di Beichen was her big brother, and since it was a pretense, Bailey Hongzhuang also acted very well. No matter whether it was her actions or words, no one would suspect that she was not a real man. After the 2 of them went ashore, they immediately stored their boats. Once again feeling the feeling of being on solid ground, the 2 of them felt a sense of relief, but neither of them let down their guard. When the 2 of them went ashore, they realized that there were other people preparing to leave. The entire pier was not as deserted as they thought. On the contrary, it was very lively. Bright lights illuminated the entire pier, and bursts of conversation and laughter entered the ears of Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Ying. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled at the same time. It seemed that the situation was much better than they had imagined. If they were the only ones on the shore, it would be easy for them to be targeted. However, with so many people here, it would be easy for them to be discovered. Even if Gao Hanchuan's methods were not weak, it was impossible for him to keep an eye on the pier every day. Whenever someone came ashore, he would arrest them to confirm their identity. There are still so many people leaving at night. Could it be that they are returning to the Shengxian continent? Baisher was puzzled. With so many people leaving together, it didn't seem like it. I don't think so. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Penglai Island isn't just an island, but a combination of many islands. It's just that the largest and most famous island is called Penglai Island. We can't be sure which island we are on right now. It's very likely that these people are heading to another island. That's right. I heard the name of another island from their discussion just now. Di Beichen replied. Let's find an inn to stay in first. I'm sure that we'll be able to obtain quite a bit of useful information. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a wise light. Obtaining information from the mouth of a waiter was undoubtedly the easiest and fastest way to obtain information. However, the people who came here were all experts above the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Would there really be a waiter here? Chapter 2951. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked all the way to the shore. Even though it was already nighttime, the entire island was still brightly lit and very lively. Along the way from the dock, there were lanterns hanging on both sides of the road. The road was long and lit up. What was different from ordinary cities was that there were no hawkers on the road here. However, the shops on both sides of the road were still full of everything. It was much better than what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had imagined. The two walked directly into the first inn. This was what they had agreed with Xiren. They would go ashore in batches and finally gather at the first inn. Shopkeeper, we want a guest room. Di Beichun said slowly. Seeing that there were guests, the shopkeeper's face immediately hung a smile. 2 guests. The upper room costs 1 low-grade spirit stone per night. How many nights would you like to stay? As soon as the words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but look at each other. Their eyes flashed with a touch of doubt. Low-grade spirit stone? Could it be that the money of Penglai Island and the money of Shengxian continent were not the same? The shopkeeper nodded. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's confused look, he also understood. I'm afraid the two of you are new to Penglai Island. The shopkeeper lowered his voice to prevent the cultivators eating in the lobby from hearing. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun nodded. Since they didn't know anything, it was better to take advantage of this opportunity to learn more. No wonder. The shopkeeper's face showed a smile of understanding. Penglai Island is different from the outside world. The common currency here is spirit stone. Ordinary money has no use here. The two of you are new here, so it's normal that you don't understand the situation. As long as you go to the square tomorrow to register your information, you will receive your first batch of spirit stones. However, after receiving this first batch of spirit stones, you will have to rely on yourselves to earn the rest. Listening to the shopkeeper's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Mingya's faces revealed a look of realization. Coming to Penglai Island was indeed like coming to a new world. Even the common currency had changed. In Bailey Hongzhuang's mind, she vaguely understood that the stones filled with energy fluctuations in Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxia's Chinquan bags were the spirit stones that the shopkeeper had mentioned. Since the two of you are new here today, why don't you stay here for the time being and pay the bill after you collect the spirit stones tomorrow? The shopkeeper had a kind smile on his face, but such kind words made Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun shocked. This shopkeeper was so kind. Was he not afraid that they would leave on credit? However, the shopkeeper's next sentence made them understand where his confidence came from. Penglai Island has a very strict punishment for people who buy on credit. If you dare to buy on credit, as long as you haven't left the island, you will definitely be caught. Since the two of you are new to Penglai Island, I advise you not to try it so easily. Thank you, shopkeeper. We will definitely pay in full tomorrow. Di Beichun bowed. The shopkeeper nodded with satisfaction. He waved his hand to the waiter behind him and said, Bring the 2 guests to the upper room. The waiter quickly greeted them and led Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Mingyao upstairs. Chapter 2952. Just as the waiter was about to leave, Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand and said, "Wait, little brother. Don't be in such a hurry to leave." Hearing this, the waiter was slightly stunned. Then he closed the door and walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. "What do the two guests want to know? As long as you can pay, I will tell you everything I know." If it was a normal day, there would be no problem with paying some compensation. However, they had just shown in front of the shopkeeper that they were newcomers. It would be inappropriate to take out the spirit stones now. It was hard to imagine that with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's status, they would still have such a difficult time. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang took out a white porcelain bottle from her chinkoan bag and said, "Is this Dan okay?" The waiter took the Dan and looked at it. Suddenly, the smile on his face became wider. Yes, of course. The value of this Dan was much higher than the low-grade spirit stones. The waiter understood that it must be because Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun did not understand the value of Penglai Island and the spirit stones. Such a good thing could only be obtained from the hands of a cultivator who had just arrived. If it was someone else who was familiar with Penglai Island, it would definitely be impossible. What do the two of you want to know? As long as it is something I know, I will never lie to you. The waiter's attitude was very enthusiastic. Since he had received such a great benefit, he naturally would not hide anything. "Little brother, I heard that only cultivators who have reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm can enter Penglai Island. Why is your cultivation not at that level?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked the question in her heart. Not only the waiter, but even the shopkeeper's cultivation was far from the 5th level of the Purple Realm. When she first entered the restaurant, she felt that this was very strange. It was just that she never had the chance to ask. Hearing this, the waiter smiled and said, "Guests, there is something you don't know. If everyone here is at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, would you come to Penglai Island to open a shop or serve people with such cultivation?" Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "Of course not." "That's right." The waiter continued. "The cultivators here are all above the 5th level of the Purple Realm. However, there are also many ordinary people on the island. Not all of them are masters. However, these 2 points do not conflict. Other than the people in the shop, everyone else you see should be masters." "How did you come to Penglai Island?" Di Beichun asked in a deep voice. "Actually, people like us with ordinary cultivations are the descendants of former experts. It's just that due to the limitations of our talent, we weren't able to cultivate to that level. However, once we cultivate to that level, we can no longer be servants. We can directly become free cultivators like you all. Even though we've been busy in the shop, we've never given up on cultivating. However, if we want to cultivate wholeheartedly, it is not possible. Unless we leave Penglai Island and cultivate to the 5th level of the Purple Realm and then come back. Compared to the outside world, the cultivation resources on Penglai Island are much more abundant. The cultivation speed here is faster. However, there's no lack of people who want to go to the outside world to enjoy glory and wealth." Chapter 2953. The attendant waved his hand. "That won't happen. Every island has its own guards to maintain the order of the island. For example, our Emerald Island has its own Emerald Guards. It has nothing to do with the conflicts between cultivators, but if it involves ordinary people, then it won't do. They will definitely be arrested by the guards. As for the consequences of being arrested, we don't know if they will die or become disabled. Two guests, the order of our Emerald Island is different from the outside world. You must not do anything out of line. Otherwise, once you are arrested by the guards, the consequences are not something you can bear. Our shopkeeper is not afraid of you buying on credit for this reason. All the shops on the island have to pay spirit stones to the guards. This also involves their own interests." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun nodded slightly. In their minds, they already had some understanding of the guards. They were like the city guards, but their strength was much stronger than the city guards. A fifth-level Purple Realm cultivator in any place in the Shengxian continent could do whatever they wanted. But here, they must not offend the guards. One could imagine the strength of the guards. Then who are the people in the guards? Why can they become guards? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with doubt. The guards were so orderly, and everyone on the island had to obey the order. There should be a certain force behind them. It was impossible for them to be formed by themselves. The guards are from the three major forces of Penglai Island. Different islands are under the jurisdiction of different forces. Hearing the attendant's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes suddenly brightened. Little brother, please introduce us to the major forces of Penglai Island. We can also avoid them. As they were new here, it was most important to know which forces they could not offend. Not only that, until now, they still did not know which force Gao Hanshun belonged to. It would be best if they could find out more. The attendant was not surprised by Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's question. In fact, almost every cultivator who came to Penglai Island for the first time would ask this question. This was because this problem would affect their future development. If they were careless and offended someone from a major power, they would die without knowing why. On our Penglai Island, there are a total of 3 major powers. They are Penglai Palace, 100 Flower Gate, and Crimson Moon Sect. The Penglai Palace, as the name suggests, is located on the island of Penglai. The Penglai Palace is extremely powerful and has many disciples. The 100 Flowers Gate was located on the 100 Flowers Island. However, the 100 Flowers Gate specialized in medicine and was famous for their pills. However, they could not be underestimated because of this. They had an astonishing number of hired thugs. The Crimson Moon Sect was located on the Crimson Moon Island. These 3 islands were named after the forces. Furthermore, the 3 islands were not far from each other. It could be said that they balanced each other out. As for our Jade Island, it's called Jade Island because this island is rich in jade. Other than these 3 major forces, there was another force that no one could ignore, and that was the Golden Flame Auction House. Chapter 2954. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen nodded. In fact, no matter where it was, the power of an auction house could not be underestimated. Without sufficient strength and means, it was absolutely impossible to collect so many treasures. Moreover, if an auction house wanted to run well, it must have powerful strength to deter others. Otherwise, if there were too many people who did not abide by the rules, the auction house would naturally be unable to continue. No one would ignore an auction house that could do well on Penglai Island. In addition to the 4 most famous forces, there are many small forces on Penglai Island. However, there are too many of them. Every island has one. Even though I have lived here since I was a child, I'm not very clear about many forces. After all, the changes on Penglai Island are too fast. Maybe a force was very powerful a few days ago, but after a few days, it will be replaced directly. When talking about these forces, the attendant seemed to be very indifferent. Obviously, it was because there were too many of these forces. Except for the 4 most feared forces, the other forces were really nothing. I wonder if you have heard of Gao Hanshun? Bailey Hongzhuang immediately asked. According to her estimation, this Gao Hanshun should not be a member of the 4 major forces. It was very likely that he was the leader of many small forces. In order to avoid the situation where the other party was in the dark and they were in the light, they first had to have some understanding of Gao Hanshun. Only then could they be more careful when taking action in the future. Gao Hanshun, the attendant was slightly stunned. Why are you asking about him? When we were at the dock, we heard other teams talking about him. He seemed to be very powerful, so we asked out of curiosity. Di Beichen's face revealed a very curious look, as if he wanted to know the gossip. Hearing this, the attendant also smiled. This kind of herd mentality was something that almost every newcomer would have. That Gao Hanshun is indeed a very famous person recently. However, he does not belong to the 4 major forces. He created his own force called the Heaven-Shaking Faction. In Penglai Island, Other than the three major forces, the other forces can only be called a gang. However, the strength of this heaven-shaking faction is indeed not to be underestimated. Recently, there have been many people talking about this heaven-shaking faction, so it is not strange for you to hear about it. In that case, that Gao Han is indeed very powerful. To be able to enjoy such an illustrious reputation on the Penglai Island, he is truly extraordinary. Bailey Hongzhuang pretended to exclaim in admiration, her expression full of yearning. The heaven-shaking faction is not on our Emerald Island, but on Qingyun Island, which is quite a distance away from our Emerald Island. Speaking of the heaven-shaking faction, I remember a piece of gossip I heard recently. If you're interested, I'll tell you about it. The more the attendant spoke, the more excited he became. Although ordinary people were usually protected by the guards, their status was still incomparable to cultivators. Even if he wanted to brag and show off, he didn't have much of a chance to do so. Only in front of newcomers like Di Beichen would he be able to be so proud of himself. Of course I'm interested. Chapter 2955. It is precisely because of this matter that the people of Jintian faction went to many islands recently. There are also people of Jintian faction on our Emerald Island, in order to find the murderer. Speaking of which, the other party is really daring, even daring to kill the younger brother of Jintian faction's leader. However, it is said that the people of Jintian faction haven't found the existence of those people after searching for so long. I think that those people might not even dare to come to Penglai Island. If they are caught, only death awaits them. The waiter said, while shaking his head. Obviously, this matter was already known to everyone. I don't know who is so daring. Do you know who the other party is? Bailey Hongzhuang asked, but deep in her eyes, a trace of sharpness quietly flashed. It seems that Gao Hanxia and his brother didn't say anything on this point. Gao Hanxia was really not an easy person to deal with. From the words of the waiter, it was clear that Jintian faction was very powerful among the many factions. Gao Hanxia actually sent the people of Jintian faction to various islands to find them. Obviously, he wouldn't give up until he caught them. The waiter shook his head. We don't know what they look like. We only know that there are 2 men and 2 women, and they are very young. Gao Hanxia left an image on his 2 younger brothers and saw the appearance of the 4 people. So recently, as long as it is a newcomer, they will be carefully checked. You 2 are also newcomers. Maybe tomorrow you will meet the people of Jintian faction, but as long as you answer truthfully, there should be no problem, as long as you don't offend them. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen quietly looked at each other. It seems that they were lucky not to be discovered tonight, but they still can't escape the questioning of Jintian faction. However, at least they have a better understanding and can make more preparations. After getting enough information from the waiter left the room. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked to the window and looked at the pedestrians below. According to their estimation, it was about time for Wen Ziren and Shangwan Yingying to arrive at the restaurant. It was fine if the 2 of them were discovered as newcomers, but Wen Ziren and Shangwan Yingying absolutely could not be discovered. Otherwise, if the 4 newcomers stayed in the same inn, it would be easy to connect the dots. The 2 of them looked out the window for a moment and saw Ziren and Shangwan Yingying slowly walking over. Di Beichen immediately transmitted his voice to Ziren and Shangwan Yingying, telling them what spirit stones were so that they wouldn't be exposed when they checked into the inn later. Downstairs, Ziren nodded quietly after hearing Di Beichen's voice transmission, indicating that he understood. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen then closed the window. Not long after, someone knocked on the door. It was Shangwan Yingying and Ziren. What's the situation? When Ziren couldn't help but ask. Were you also tracked on the way here? Di Beichen shook his head slightly. No, but I'm afraid we will meet the people of Jintian faction tomorrow. What do you mean? When Ziren was confused. They went ashore very smoothly and didn't meet anyone at all. They thought they could relax, but now looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying's expression, They felt that the situation was not as simple as they thought. Chapter 2956. So, the reason why we weren't blocked at the pier tonight was because the shocking Heaven Factions people were guarding the square. When Zyron said in a deep voice, Bachin nodded. That's right. Any cultivator who just arrived here without spirit stones can't survive on this Punglai island, so they must go to the square to register and receive the spirit stones. They don't need to guard the pier at all because there are many people coming and going at the pier. Even if the shocking Heaven faction is quite strong, they can't stop so many people from dissatisfied. What's more, there's so many people coming and going at the pier, they can't judge who is a newcomer. But as long as someone goes to receive the spirit stones, they must be newcomers. Plus, they don't have any background, they don't need to be afraid at all. When Zyron frowned, this Gao Han Shun is really smart. He has already calculated all of this. Isn't it very troublesome? Fortunately, the two of you haven't been discovered. It's just me and Beichun. It shouldn't be too difficult to get through. The shopkeeper already knows that Beichun and I are newcomers today, so we must go to the square tomorrow to receive the spirit stones. Otherwise, it will be more suspicious if we hide. The two of you simply don't need to receive the spirit stones. We will think of a way to get the spirit stones later. As long as the four of you don't appear together, it's reasonable to say that the shocking Heaven faction is difficult to determine. Her clear and bright phoenix eyes flashed with wisdom. Bailey Hongzhuang thought about the situation in front of her and already had some plans in her heart. Shangwan Yingying nodded. Hongzhuang is right. Let's do it, but the two of you have to be more careful tomorrow. Don't worry, although Gao Hanshan hates us to the bone, the people he sent to the Emerald Island are just ordinary people. As long as we are careful, it won't be difficult to get through. Deep Beichan smiled faintly. Even if they were heavily guarded now, it wouldn't make them panic. I also don't believe that those guys are so smart. Let's go to the square tomorrow and see the situation. The tension on Zyron's face dissipated a little. I'll go order some wine and dishes and see how the wine and dishes on Punglai Island taste. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to the spirit stones in Gao Hanxia's Chinquan bag. There are more than 200 pieces. At least we don't need to worry for a short time. These spirit stones are used to help cultivators cultivate. It's because every cultivator needs it, Punglai Island's currency. We should find a way to get more spirit stones as soon as possible. Dibei Chin's voice was slightly heavy. This spirit stone was a great weapon to improve their cultivation. Other things were not what they were most worried about right now. What they were most worried about was that their cultivation was not enough. In such a situation, they simply can't fight with others. Assessed AST. If that was the case, there would be endless troubles. If he wanted to get rid of this weakness, he had to raise his cultivation as soon as possible. Unfortunately, to advance from the 3rd level of the Purple Realm to the 5th level of the Purple Realm was definitely not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. During this period of time, they had to be extra careful and avoid conflicts with others. Chapter 2957. The four of them looked at each other. With their status, they had never worried about money. They never thought that after coming to Punglai Island, they would experience the feeling of poverty. This feeling of being unable to make ends meet really made them feel a little helpless. We'll think of a way to solve this problem tomorrow. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Although we don't need gold coins here, dampills are hard currency no matter what. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Deep Beichen and the other two's gazes fell on her. Speaking of which, the three of them were all cultivators. It was indeed a very difficult thing for them to earn spirit stones. However, with a genius alchemist like Bailey Hongzhuang, earning spirit stones would not be so difficult. Alchemists, those were the rich among the rich. We have prepared a lot of pills. If it doesn't work, we'll exchange them for some spirit stones. Di Beichun said slowly. However, the value of spirit stones here is very high. I'm afraid that the amount of spirit stones we can exchange for will not be too much. Bailey Hongzhuang came to Punglai Island. It was naturally very important for her to improve her cultivation. How could she spend all her time on alchemy? Forget it. We'll take it one step at a time. We'll find a way. Zyron waved his hand. A relaxed expression appeared between his eyebrows. If there's really no way to earn spirit stones, then how did the cultivators on Penglai Island survive? That makes sense. Di Baichen laughed heartily. It was meaningless to worry too much. Once they had a better understanding of Penglai Island, there would be a way. I'll go order some food and wine first. The most important thing is to fill our stomachs. With that, Zyron and Shangwan Yingying walked out of the house and went downstairs to order food and wine. After the food and wine were sent to Zyron's house, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichun entered Zyron's room. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichun went to the square of the Emerald Island under the guidance of the shopkeeper. During the day, Emerald Island was even more lively than at night. Pedestrians could be seen everywhere, but all of them were cultivators. Walking on the streets, Bailey Hongzhuang exclaimed inwardly when she sensed the elemental energy waves emitted from the bodies of the pedestrians. If the people of Penglai Island appeared in the outside world at the same time, it would cause a huge commotion in the Shengxian continent. It was this feeling that made Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen nervous. For the sake of their loved ones, they had to increase their strength. The people here were enough to threaten the existence of Tiangang's sect. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen arrived at the square, they saw a huge square sitting on the flat ground. The whole square was white. At a glance, it looked very clean, simple, and practical. There were 4 stages in this square. Although it was the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang came to this square, she could roughly guess that these 4 stages were fighting stages. In other words, it was likely to be a place for life and death battles. If there was a big grudge between cultivators, it was very likely that they would settle it on these stages. At the same time, it was also a place for everyone to witness. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen did not stay in the square for too long. Instead, they went directly to a building next to the square. Chapter 2958. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen walked in, 2 people in a tea house outside the square looked at each other and couldn't help but put down their teacups. Their eyes flashed with a touch of light. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen walked into the house together. It was different from what they had imagined. The furnishings in the house were very ordinary and didn't give off a grand feeling. According to the waiter, the registration of the cultivator's information and the first set of spirit stones were given. This was jointly organized by the 4 major forces of Penglai Island. The purpose was to let the new cultivators better adapt to the environment of Penglai Island and at the same time leave behind some good fortune. In this way, all the new cultivators had received help from the 4 major forces. At least, they would feel grateful to the 4 major forces. Therefore, in Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's imagination, this place should be very bright and spacious. However, it seemed to be just an ordinary place now. The most important thing was that there was only one old man inside. At this moment, his eyes were half closed as if he had fallen asleep. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked in front of the old man and called softly, "Senior?" Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the old man who seemed to have fallen asleep slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen indifferently and said casually, "Newcomers." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, "Yes." The old man slowly took out the banknote from the drawer and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. Name? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen looked at each other. Just when they were about to say their names, the old man's voice sounded again. "Don't think too much. Just say your real name. The news here will not be known by anyone outside. Even the people from the 4 major forces won't know." As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen couldn't help but be stunned. Their eyes flashed with deep surprise. If it was said that outsiders did not know about this situation, they would believe it. However, this place was originally built by the 4 great forces, so how could they not know about this news? The old man's words were simply too outrageous. However, The old man clearly did not intend to continue explaining. He merely swept his turbid gaze across Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Mingya, as if saying that it was up to them whether they believed him or not. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the old man in front of him. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun." Hearing this, the old man's hand that was recording Bailey Hongzhuang's name paused. He looked up at Di Beichun and asked, "Your surname is Di?" "That's right." Di Beichun nodded. "Is there a problem?" The old man carefully sized up Di Beichun. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. He then shook his head and said, "Nothing." Seeing this, although Di Beichun felt that it was a little strange, he did not continue kissing. It was obvious that the old man did not intend to say anything. It was probably because his surname was a little strange. After recording the names, the old man took out 2 Chinquan bags from the drawer and placed them on the table. 100 spiritual stones for each person. Take this manual and you may leave. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man closed his eyes again. Nothing changed, just like before Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun arrived. Chapter 29:59. Even though the other party had a lazy look on his face the entire time, since they had taken something useful from this place, they naturally needed to thank him. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun felt that the old man's words were too strange. They could faintly sense that this seemingly lethargic old man was not an ordinary person. This was because when he had mentioned the 4 great authorities, there was no trace of reverence on his face. On the contrary, there was a sense of indifference. The hidden meaning behind this was rather complicated. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were about to turn around and leave, the old man opened his eyes once again. "Young people, since you've arrived on Penglai Island, it would be best for you to head to the Demon Abyss as soon as possible." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun paused in their footsteps. Their hearts were filled with astonishment, as they could not understand why the old man would suddenly say such a thing. However, the old man's next words caused their hearts to jump out of their chests. In this place, the Demon Abyss is the most convenient place to hide one's identity. If you want to hide your identity elsewhere, it won't be that easy. The old man's voice was low and hoarse. His voice was not very loud, but it sounded like he was talking in his sleep. However, his words hammered heavily into Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's hearts. Almost as soon as they heard these words, their hearts churned with perilous waves. They'd been seen through. This old man must have seen through their identities. Otherwise, he would never have said such a thing. However, ever since they had entered this place, they had not shown any signs of abnormality. However, they had been seen through just like that. This was just too terrifying. At this moment, they were certain that this old man was not in his twilight years. On the contrary, it was very likely that he was an old demon, that they had been seen through just like that had completely exceeded Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's expectations. They were even more worried that this old man might be related to the members of the Heaven Shaking Association. Otherwise, they would be in real trouble. "I'm already a pile of old bones. You don't have to take it to heart. I'm just giving you a reminder on account of your manners. Let's go." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun turned around and saw that the old man had once again laid down on the reclining chair. He had no intention of speaking at all. The two of them felt a wave of apprehension, but they knew that everything the old man had said was true. If this old man really wanted to harm them, he would have already acted. Demon Refining Abyss. This was also the place where Bailey Hongzhuang and the others planned to go, but now they only knew that Demon Refining Abyss was on Demon Refining Island, and it was still a long way from Emerald Island. However, if it was convenient for them to hide their identities there, then it was indeed a good place for them to go. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked out of the house, trembling with fear. It wasn't until they stood under the sun again that they breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go back first. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun. After the old man's words, their feelings were a little complicated. Most importantly, The old man's words made them realize that the situation here was not safe. Di Beichun looked around. The members of the Heaven Shaking Association were very likely to be nearby. It was just that he did not know when they would appear. Chapter 2960. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked forward, two figures suddenly appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Both of them were about 35 years old, and their rough faces revealed a valiant aura. The moment they saw these two people, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had already guessed that these two guys must be the people sent by the Jintian faction to find them. "What are your names?" The two men looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Their tone was cold, and their attitude was not polite at all. It was as if they did not put Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun in their eyes. They were just newcomers. In fact, every newcomer was easy to bully, so the two men did not take them seriously at all. Di Beichun frowned at the two men and said, "Who are you? Why are you blocking our way?" "We are people from the Jintian faction. We were ordered by the faction leader to find a few newcomers here to confirm your identity. Tell me your names." "Di Chun, Di Bei." At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang was dressed as a man, and her identity was Di Beichun's younger brother, so she simply used the first two words of Di Beichun's name. When she was receiving the spirit stones before, because the old man said that it would not be leaked, Bailey Hongzhuang said her real name. It was not a rare thing for a woman to dress up as a man on Penglai Island, but beautiful women often choose to dress up as men in order to avoid some harassment. Of course, when you have enough strength to protect yourself, there is no need to continue to disguise. Hearing this, the two men nodded and did not take Di Beichun and Di Beichun's name to heart. "When did you come to Emerald Island?" "Yesterday. When you came from the outside, did you see a team of 4 people?" The man asked immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun shook their heads together and said, "No." Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's movements were so consistent, the two men also believed a little. If one nodded and the other shook his head, then the problem would be big. "The faction leader asked us to find 4 people. There are only 2 of them. It should not be them." The slightly fat man said slowly, his attention no longer on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they could avoid this layer of investigation, they could rest. They could rest assured. However, the skinny man shook his head and reprimanded the chubby man. "Are you stupid? If you know that there are people's people, you will come out with 4 people." The gang leader had said that anyone who came in recently was a suspect and had to be carefully investigated. If they missed the opportunity, they would be severely punished. "What's more, do you want the reward?" After the thin man's reminder, the fat man's eyes lit up and said, "You are right. If these 2 people are really them, then we will be rich. Can we go?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. She had a faint premonition that if they continued to stay here, the situation would become more and more troublesome. "Eat these 2 true chi pills, then answer our questions again." The thin man opened his right hand. There were 2 perfectly round pills in his palm. When she heard the words true chi pill, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly changed and her heart thumped. She did not expect that Penglai Island would have true chi pills. Chapter 2961. Jinchi pill, as the name suggests, is related to sincerity. As long as you take the Jinchi pill, no matter what the other party asks you, you can only tell the truth. You can't tell any lies at all. Although the level of this Jinchi pill is not high, it has a great effect, so it was widely used thousands of years ago. Bailey Hongzhuang has never heard of anyone using Jinchi pill since she transmigrated. She only thought that this Jinchi pill has been lost. She didn't expect to see Jinchi pill again in this Penglai Island. It was really beyond her expectation. If they took the Jinchi pill, it was tantamount to completely exposing their identity. If she was prepared, she could have a way to deal with it, but she didn't think that Jinchi pill would appear at all. Naturally, she had no way to deal with it at this moment. What is Jinchi pill? I don't want to eat it. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned, and a look of refusal appeared on her face. However, this behavior did not make the two people feel strange. In fact, not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but anyone who was suddenly forced to eat the pill would not be willing. Eating the Jinchi pill is not bad for you. It is just to test whether what you said just now is true or not. The lean man said. Although Di Beichun didn't know what the use of the Jinchi pill was, he knew that this Jinchi pill was definitely not something good when he noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. You just take out something and you want us to eat it. Even if we are new here and don't know enough about many things, you are bullying us too much. Di Beichun's face was filled with a sullen expression. He was about to resist because the other party's actions had crossed his bottom line. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were about to resist, the lean man and the chubby man couldn't help but look at each other with a complicated expression. In fact, they also knew that this approach was indeed a bit difficult, but Jinchi pill really had no harm. I can assure you that this true Qi pill does not have any harm. You may not know this in the outside world, but in our Penglai Island, this is a method that is often used. The slightly plump man explained. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's faces were always full of rejection, and they were not willing to listen to their explanations. Bailey Hongzhuang was also secretly anxious. It seemed that they had underestimated the importance of Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu to Gao Hanxiu. In order to capture the four of them, Gao Hanchun didn't even hesitate to use true Qi pills on a large scale. Just from this point alone, one could see many things. Based on their performance, it was likely that they would not be allowed to leave unless they consumed the true Qi pill. In this way, the other party would definitely suspect them even more, and their identities would naturally be exposed. Speaking of which, this was truly a troublesome matter. If you want to eat, you can eat by yourselves. We won't eat, Bailey Hongzhuang said coldly. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's stubbornness, the lean man's face also showed a trace of impatience, and his low voice also became a bit more threatening. I'm not asking for your opinion now. If I ask you to eat, you have to eat. Otherwise, you will be making an enemy of our entire heaven-shaking faction. You have to think carefully. What heaven-shaking faction? We have never heard of it. Di Beichun said coldly. You two guys who don't know anything naturally haven't heard of it. Chapter 2962. The commotion caused by Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four had attracted the attention of many people. Almost everyone recognized that the two were from the Shocking Heaven faction. It's the Shocking Heaven faction again. Recently, the Shocking Heaven faction's movements have been too big. It makes people feel very uncomfortable. The current strength of the Heaven-Shaking faction is indeed very powerful. But the Heaven-Shaking faction is not the only faction on the Penglai Island. Right now, they are acting so arrogantly, as if they're the only faction. That's because the two brothers of the Shocking Heaven faction were killed. Gao Hanchun is now angry from embarrassment. If he doesn't find the murderer, he will have no place to hide his face. These two newcomers are really unlucky. However, recently, as long as they are new cultivators, they will all be found by the Shocking Heaven faction. Everyone, just treat it as a joke. Previously, I saw two newcomers on other islands who refused to be interrogated by the Shocking Heaven faction. As a result, they were directly killed. TSK. Everyone discussed while watching the show. For them, this matter had nothing to do with them. Anyway, it was very interesting to watch a show. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four and the lean man's group of four were still confronting each other. The atmosphere was getting more and more tense. Beichun, once you take this true Qi Dan, you will definitely be telling the truth. Even we can't control it. So, you must not take it. Bailey Hongzhuang transmitted to Di Beichun. They must think of a countermeasure. Hearing this, Di Beichun also understood. He also felt very helpless about the existence of the true Qi Dan. Although there are only these two guys here, I reckon that there are definitely more than these two people in the shocking Heaven faction on Emerald Island. We can't fight recklessly. Once our strength is exposed, it will be more troublesome. We can only run. Bachan said in a deep voice. That's the only way now. Later, we will pretend to take the medicine and then take the opportunity to escape. With the speed of the two of us, we should be able to shake them off. As long as we find a secluded corner, we can enter the chaos ring and disguise ourselves before coming out. It won't be easy for them to recognize us, Bailey Hongzhuang said. The two of them confirmed the answer with a single glance. Fortunately, they had the existence of a heaven-defying divine tool like the chaos ring. Using it to avoid being tracked was practically the best method. I say, do you two understand? If you don't eat it, we'll have to put in some effort to make you swallow it. The lean man's voice was full of threat, and his expression was a little more ferocious. With so many people paying attention to them, if they continued to delay like this, it would only weaken their heaven-shaking faction's face. As he spoke, the lean man's 6th-level purple realm aura erupted. Obviously, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang and Gurian did not listen to him, he would immediately take action. At most, you two have just reached the 5th level of the purple realm. You better think carefully. If you let the two of us do it, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as eating a pill. If you lose an arm or a leg, or even lose your life, don't regret it. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bachan's faces flashed with a trace of fear, as if they were threatened by the two's strength and words, and their expressions became hesitant. Chapter 2963. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was panicking, the two men from the Heaven-Shaking faction showed a satisfied look. They were members of the Heaven-Shaking faction. If they couldn't even deal with two newcomers, wouldn't they lose a lot of face? At this moment, the two men didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang might be the culprits they wanted to catch. They only thought about how to protect their face. On this Penglai Island, there were many people with strength. But when they reached this level, what they valued the most was their face. They didn't care about other things, but they had to care about their face. Bachan's face also showed a complicated expression, mixed with hesitation and fear. Obviously, he couldn't make up his mind. You really didn't lie to us? Is it really okay to eat this pill? You didn't deliberately lie to us and then use this method to control us, right? I heard that some forces just can't recruit people. So they use this kind of despicable method to make others have no chance to refuse. You can't be such people, right? Bachan looked at the two men from the Heaven-Shaking faction suspiciously, his eyes full of fear. As soon as these words came out, many cultivators in the surrounding tea houses frowned. They had never thought about this before. Now that they heard Bachan's reminder, they also came back to their senses. Could this man's guess be true? The Heaven-Shaking faction wasn't that powerful before, but in the past 2 years, they have recruited more and more people, and their influence is getting bigger and bigger. The so-called brother's death couldn't be a gimmick deliberately made up by Gao Hanshan, and in fact, he wants to use this method to recruit people, right? If that's the case, then this is really a perfect plan. It's simply keeping everyone in the dark. The two men from the Heaven-Shaking faction couldn't help but be dumbfounded after hearing Bachan's words. Even they didn't think of this possibility, okay? The most terrible thing was that after Bachan said so, they connected all the things together and felt that it was very reasonable. Feeling the gradually changing gazes of the people around them, the two men were almost anxious to death. What the hell was this? The pill in their hands was indeed a true chi pill, and not any other pill at all. You stinking brat. Are you tired of living? What nonsense are you talking about? The lean man cursed. He noticed that some people were gradually approaching, wanting to know what was going on. Although he was very sure that this was a true chi pill, he didn't know why he was being watched by so many people. Hurry up and eat it for me. Otherwise, we'll take action. The chubby man threatened. Something was wrong with the surrounding situation. Although the heaven-shaking faction was powerful, their headquarters was not on the Emerald Island. If the native forces of the Emerald Island were to suspect them, then the two of them would not have a good ending. Therefore, their only way was to let Di Bei Chun eat the Jinchi Dan. In this way, all the problems would naturally be solved. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's faces showed a touch of helplessness, and said, "Let's eat it." The two of them slowly took the true chi pill from the lean man's hand and prepared to eat it. Chapter 2964. They believed that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun took the pills, all the misunderstandings would be resolved. However, just as the two men relaxed, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun turned around and ran away. The two of them instantly increased their speed to the extreme. They had said so much just to numb the two men from the heaven-shaking faction and let them know that they didn't dare to resist. Therefore, they wouldn't keep an eye on them. Di Beichun's words attracted the attention of everyone present, and at the same time, it also diverted the attention of the two men from the heaven-shaking faction. As a result, the moment they picked up the pills was the best opportunity to escape. In the blink of an eye, the two men from the heaven-shaking faction had just heaved a sigh of relief. Before they could react, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun running away in front of them. They ran away. The two men were stunned for a moment. Then they quickly chased after them. "You two stinking brats, don't run." However, just as the two men from the heaven-shaking faction were about to chase after them, some of the cultivators around them intentionally blocked their path. The heaven-shaking faction's recent behavior was a little too arrogant, so some people didn't mind causing some trouble for them. Although it was only a short delay, by the time the two men caught up, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had already disappeared in some corner. "Damn it, I didn't think that those two brats would dare to run away." The skinny man secretly cursed and directly punched the wall. His skinny face was full of shame and anger. He never thought that those two cowardly fellows would have the possibility of running away. Being tricked by those two brats in front of so many people, it would be a great loss of face if word got out. If I had known earlier, I would have used force to force those two guys to eat it. Deng Liang, why do I feel that today's situation is a little bad? The chubby man frowned. He already had an ominous premonition. Deng Liang's face also became very ugly. "I'm afraid we're in trouble. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have let those two guys eat the truth pill." Those two fellows ran away just like that. Could they really be the murderers we're looking for? Kong Wei, the slightly plump man, couldn't help but ask. The two of them looked at each other. In fact, even until now, the two of them had no idea what was going on. They couldn't be sure whether the two newcomers were afraid of being poisoned or because they were the culprits. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun ran to a secluded corner before entering the chaos ring. They would only come out when it was safe. "Master, the heaven-shaking faction's method of capturing people is really not simple. If we encounter something like this again in the future, I'm afraid it will be very troublesome." Xiaohei jumped in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Her furry head was full of helplessness. The scene just now was really thrilling. If they didn't seize the opportunity to escape, once they were caught, it would be really troublesome. Chapter 2965. Is the effect of the true nature pill really that miraculous? Di Beichun's handsome eyes flashed with disbelief. He had never heard of the existence of the true nature pill before. Today, when he heard of it for the first time, it really surprised him. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "This true nature pill is indeed very miraculous. 1,000 years ago, it was also a method that people often use to interrogate people. I have never seen anyone use the true nature pill before. I thought it had been lost in the Shangxian continent. I didn't expect to see it again in Penglai Island. It really caught us off guard. Is this pill the same as the one you used 1,000 years ago?" Di Baichen handed the true nature pill in his hand to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the true nature pill in her hand, sniffed it, and nodded. Yes, it's the same. In that case, many of the pills are not lost. They are just in the hands of Panglai Island. Di Baichen's eyes were deep. Today was only their second day in Panglai Island. The things they came in contact with made people sigh. It seems that I have to make more preparations. I'm afraid there are many methods here that can't be compared to the outside world. A sharp light flashed through Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. In terms of methods, she also had many. She would remember today's matter. The heaven-shaking faction put them in danger. When they have the chance, they will definitely let the heaven-shaking faction have a taste of their own medicine. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen changed their appearance again. Their appearance was no longer the same as before. Presumably, it would be difficult for the other party to discover them after they go out. After what happened just now, the people of the heaven-shaking faction will probably suspect that the two of you are the murderers. Once the two of them spread the news, I'm afraid there will be many more people of the heaven-shaking faction on Emerald Island. It will be even more difficult to leave this place. Bai Shi frowned. His eyes flashed with deep worry. There's no other way now. We can only take one step at a time. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged her shoulders. The current development of the situation was beyond their expectations. They thought that it wouldn't be difficult to muddle through today, but they didn't expect that things would become so big. It was really troublesome. We have to meet up with Xiren and inform them of this news so that they can be prepared. Fortunately, only the two of us have been exposed. As long as they disguise themselves a bit more and don't get suspected by the heaven-shaking faction, everything will be fine. Di Baichen said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. We've been here for a while, so I'm afraid the outside world is already in an uproar. The heaven-shaking faction's people will soon find the inn we're staying in, and Xiren's group will be caught off guard. Let's go back and take a look. After making their decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen exited the Chaos Ring and reappeared on the Emerald Island. The two of them walked all the way to the inn. When they entered the inn, they found that the heaven-shaking faction didn't immediately find them. It was much better than they expected. However, when they passed by the lobby, almost everyone was talking about what happened just now. Have you heard about what happened to the heaven-shaking faction? I heard. It is said that everyone suspects that the heaven-shaking faction's truth pill is fake. Their purpose is to use this method to recruit people. Chapter 2966. Inside the room, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were anxiously pacing back and forth. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen went to the square in the morning, the two of them were very worried. However, because there was a certain risk, Di Baichen and Shangwan Yingying told them to stay in the restaurant at ease. After all, it was better for the two of them to be watched than to be watched by 4 people. However, after waiting for a long time, they did not see Di Baichen and Shangwan Yingying return. When they could not help but go out to inquire about the news, they heard the discussions of the people in the inn. They asked the waiter and found out what had happened. Baichen and Shangwan Yingying ran away. I wonder if they will be caught? Shangwan Yingying's face was full of worry. They did not expect the heaven-shaking faction to be so powerful. Most importantly, although the Emerald Island was not big, it was not small either. So many people in the square had seen Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. Even if they had temporarily escaped the heaven-shaking faction's pursuit, where could they hide? Once they were discovered, they would be in big trouble. When Xiren's brows were also full of worry. I believe that with Baichen and Shangwan Yingying's ability, they will definitely find a way to escape. However, when he said this, Xiren did not have enough confidence. The main reason was that the people here were more powerful than the other. If someone really wanted to catch Di Baichen and Shangwan Yingying, it would not be easy to escape. If Baichen and Shangwan Yingying are really caught with Gao Hanchuan's character, I'm afraid Shangwan Yingying's brows wrinkled. She did not dare to think about the consequences. Let's pay more attention to the news. At least we haven't heard any news of Beichen and Shangwan Yingying being caught. This is the best news. Just as Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were talking, suddenly there was a knock on the door. When Xiren immediately became vigilant. At this time, someone suddenly knocked on the door. Could it be that the heaven-shaking faction had come to the end of search? The two of them slowly opened the door, only to see two strangers standing outside. However, in the next second, Xiren had already reacted. "It's you guys?" Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. It was not easy for Xiren to recognize them. Shangwan Ying was a little puzzled at first, but after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang smile, she understood. "Fortunately, you weren't caught. We were so worried. How could the two of us be caught so easily? However, we really can't stay on Emerald Island for long. After today's incident, the Jintian faction will definitely focus their investigation on the Emerald Island. It's really troublesome," Di Beichen said in a deep voice. "I've already heard some news in the inn." Xiren nodded. "I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to leave now." Anyone who intends to leave today will be suspected. The docks might already be watched. The moment we show ourselves, it's very likely that we'll be caught. Then what should we do now? Shangwan Yingying was annoyed. Gao Hanxia and Shangwan Yingying really deserve to die. They caused us such a big trouble. However, we've just arrived on Emerald Island and we're already being chased everywhere. I don't know when this situation will be resolved. Chapter 2967. Since the Emerald Island had become like this, the situation on the other islands would not be much better than the Emerald Island. Even if they wanted to pretend that they were not newcomers, they still knew too little about the Penglai Island. As long as the other party asked a few more questions, it was very likely that they would be exposed, which was undoubtedly extremely terrible. If going to any place was the same, then what was the difference between staying on the Emerald Island and going to the Emerald Island? Hearing Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying fell into silence. But in their minds, they could not help but think of the words that the old man had said to them before. If they wanted to hide their identity, the easiest place was the demonic abyss. Demonic abyss, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen said in unison. Seeing Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang say the same place at the same time, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were also surprised. "What do you mean? If we leave the Emerald Island, let's go to the demonic abyss first. That should be the most suitable place for us to hide our identity. And there, we can improve our strength better there, and there should be a great chance to earn spirit stones." Di Beichen's voice was low, and his deep black eyes were filled with wisdom and farsightedness. He had never been to the demonic abyss, but he was very familiar with the Bloodland abyss. If his judgment was correct, the demonic abyss and the Bloodland abyss should be the same type of existence, but the demonic abyss had a higher requirement for cultivation. The cultivators on the Penglai Island had all met the requirements to enter the demonic abyss, so the demonic abyss must be an extremely lively place. In such a place filled with slaughter and blood, no one would care about who you were. Even if the heaven-shaking faction's influence was not small, once they went to the demonic abyss, they would definitely not be able to use their power, because no one would care about them. The demonic abyss was a place that relied on strength, not numbers. There were plenty of people who took the other party's life because of a disagreement. It was impossible for the heaven-shaking faction to rely on the power of their faction to intimidate others in the demonic refining abyss. Xiren pondered for a moment before his eyes lit up. "You're right. The demonic refining abyss should be the same as the bloody ground abyss. It's an unreasonable place. No force can play a relative role in that place. You two are quite smart. Why didn't I think of that? However, with our strength, we still have to be careful when we go to the demonic abyss. The average strength of the cultivators there is probably stronger than that of the Emerald Island." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was slightly heavy. She was not extremely happy because she had found a place to go, because going to the demonic abyss might be even more dangerous than the environment they were currently in. Thinking back, when we went to the bloody ground abyss, we were all so inexperienced. The people there were all on their own. As long as we are careful, there won't be a problem. At least it's much better than hiding like a rat on the Emerald Island. Xiron said with a faint smile. In that case, let's go to the demonic refining abyss after leaving the Emerald Island. Right now, we have to think a way to leave this place. Hong Zhuang, Beichen's physique shouldn't be a problem, right? With our current situation, I'm afraid we won't be able to go to the auction for the time being. Chapter 2968. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face showed a touch of helplessness. What she was most worried about was the change in Di Beichen's physique. If they could find those two herbs, Di Beichen's cursed physique would turn into a physique of heaven's will, then his cultivation speed would greatly increase. On the contrary, as long as his physique didn't change, Di Beichen's cultivation speed would definitely be much slower than ordinary people. Unfortunately, a big problem like Gao Hanshun had appeared, so their original plan could only be ruined. Don't worry, my body won't have any problems for the time being. The most important thing now is to solve this big problem in front of us. Although Gao Hanshun won't give up until he finds us, if he can't find us, I believe he won't be able to hold on for too long. After all, even if he's the faction master of the heaven-shaking faction, he can't make everyone give up their own interests to help him find people. In the long run, complaints will be inevitable. Di Beichen's face was filled with a comforting smile, and his heart was filled with warmth. He knew very well how much Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two cared about him. Beichen's body won't have any problems in the next 1 or 2 years, but to be on the safe side, we can't delay for too long. We don't know if the Golden Flame auction house still has those two herbs, and if they do, we need to consider what we need to pay them. All these preparations will take time. Bailey Hongzhuang's clear voice was somewhat heavy. To her, nothing was more important than Di Beichen's safety. If something happened to Beichen because of Gao Hanshun, she would definitely bury the entire heaven-shaking faction. Xiron nodded. No matter what, finding the herbs is the most important thing. Once we get to the demonic refining island and get rid of the heaven-shaking faction's pursuit, we'll have to think of a way. That damn Gao Hanshun, those three brothers are really annoying. Shangguan Yingying cursed. After confirming their next plan, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three stayed in the house and were not in a hurry to leave. If they did not find out everything, it would be too risky for them to leave rashly. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three received the news that the pier was under the control of the heaven-shaking faction. Anyone who wanted to leave would be investigated by heaven-shaking faction. Heaven-shaking faction's people were almost certain that Bailey Hongzhuang duo who escaped today were the culprits. I'll go downstairs to order some food and wine and get some information, when Xiron said. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two nodded. Right now, the news was very important to them. Being trapped on Emerald Island was always very dangerous. Compared to the depressed mood of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, Kong Wei and the other heaven-shaking faction members were not in a good mood either. It's really strange. The entire Emerald Island is only so big. We've been looking for them for so long, but we still haven't found them. Where did they hide? I've already asked the people around. It seems that after they escaped this morning, no one has seen them again. This is really strange. Could it be that someone deliberately helped them hide? Deng Liang frowned. They had caused such a big commotion today. If they could not hand the two over, they would be the unlucky ones. Chapter 2969. Kong Wei sighed, as if he wanted to accept the consequences of his crime. He couldn't help but shiver. He really didn't want to experience that kind of consequence. When Xiron returned to the room, a smile actually appeared on his face. Beichun, the two of you are really amazing today. Xiron gave Di Beichun a thumbs up with a hint of schadenfreude. Looking at Xiron's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. The two of them were somewhat puzzled, not understanding what Zyron meant. What news did you hear? It doesn't seem to be bad news. Di Bachin asked. Zyron smiled faintly. Actually, this is not good news for us, because our situation is still as dangerous. However, this is bad news for the Heaven-Shaking faction, so I think it's good news. What do you mean after talking for so long? Don't keep us in suspense. Quickly tell us. Shangguan Yingying couldn't hold back her impatience and quickly said, Didn't you refuse to take the true nature pill today? Di Bachin nodded. That's right. What's the problem with that? Not a big problem. Not only did you not take the true nature pill, but you also took it and ran away. Now, many people suspect that the reason why the Heaven-Shaking faction was able to grow so strong in such a short period of time is because they used control methods on many people, forcing them to take the pill to recruit more people. Many people have already believed that the news of Gao Hanchuan's two younger brothers being killed was just a rumor he deliberately spread, and it was not the truth at all. It was just a pretense to deceive everyone. If the pill is still in the hands of the Heaven-Shaking faction, they can still prove it. But the two of you took the pill and ran away, which means that the dead cannot testify. No matter how the Heaven-Shaking faction tries to explain, everyone will still be suspicious. It is said that the local forces of the Emerald Island are very dissatisfied with the Heaven-Shaking Association because of this matter. The Heaven-Shaking Association is determined to find the two of you and prove their innocence. Listening to Zyron's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be surprised. She also felt that Di Bachin's previous statement to arouse everyone's suspicion was extremely wise, but she didn't expect the matter to ferment so quickly, and the impact was also beyond her expectations. In that case, if the Heaven-Shaking faction doesn't find you, wouldn't it be very difficult for them? Shangguan Yingying's lips curled into a smile. The Heaven-Shaking faction had caused them so much trouble, and now she had also gotten into trouble. She was really happy to see this. When Zyron nodded, all the Heaven-Shaking faction members from the nearby islands have rushed to the Emerald Island, saying that they must find the two of you. Moreover, I heard that Gao Hanchun will be coming to Emerald Island personally tomorrow. In short, there will be a good show to watch. In that case, we can't let them find us. It's best to turn this suspicion into irrefutable evidence. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed. Gao Hanchun had forced them into such a situation. Although she didn't have the strength to fight against the Heaven-Shaking Association, it was still very good to use some small tricks to create some trouble. It seems Hongzhuang seems to have an idea. Shangguan Yingying laughed. Chapter 2970. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Shangguan Yingying and the other two smiled. In terms of means, they couldn't compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. Although in terms of cultivation and number of people, they were no match for the Heaven-Shaking faction, but in terms of means, this was not necessarily the case. Anyway, we can't leave even if we want to now. The dock has been closely guarded. Now, anyone who wants to leave will be targeted. We might as well just stay here. Zyron shrugged his shoulders. The Heaven-Shaking faction's people obviously wouldn't give up until they caught Di Bachin and Shangguan Yingying. At this moment, the people who wanted to leave were the first to bear the brunt. Since they couldn't leave, they might as well not leave in a hurry. The Heaven-Shaking faction's movement is so big, and it's such a forceful action, it will inevitably cause a lot of dissatisfaction. This is not a good thing for them. Di Bachin slowly sipped his tea, a faint smile on his picturesque face. In order to find the four of them, Gao Hanchun would have to pay a great price in the future. Now it seemed that the Heaven-Shaking faction was very awe-inspiring, but once the other forces showed their dissatisfaction, the other forces would certainly take this opportunity to show their dissatisfaction. In this regard, Gao Hanchun had made the wrong decision from the beginning. Unless their strength had reached the level of the four major forces, their actions were not far from causing public anger. Naturally, Di Bachin had added fuel to the fire. Of course, this was also related to Gao Hanchun underestimating the four of them. If ordinary cultivators didn't have the ability to disguise themselves, it would be very easy for them to be caught by the heaven-shaking faction. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's disguise technique was not comparable to ordinary people. Even if their cultivation had reached the Purple Realm, it would still be difficult for them to judge their disguise, unless the opponent's cultivation was much higher than theirs. For example, the old man they saw today. Although they didn't know what kind of cultivation the old man had reached, Di Beichun was sure that the old man was very strong. He had seen through their disguise almost at a glance. In front of such an expert, all disguises were useless. Fortunately, the old man did not have any ill intentions towards them. Otherwise, they would have really gotten into big trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the alchemy furnace and began to refine the Dan. The level of the true spirit Dan was not high, but it had a wide range of uses. In his previous life, Bailey Hongzhuang would often keep a few true qi pills on her body so that she could use them when necessary. Back then, she thought that this true nature pill was a great way to obtain true information. However, if this pill backfired on them, it wouldn't be a good thing. Therefore, at that time, she specially researched how to crack the effects of this true nature pill. In the end, she managed to figure out. However, only the members of the Bailey family knew about this. The others probably couldn't do anything about the Jinqi pill. What she needed to make now was the pill to break the true heart pill. This was not a real pill, but a fusion of some special materials to produce the effect of resisting the true heart pill. With this pill, he would be able to save a lot of trouble when traveling around Penglai Island. Chapter 2971. While Bailey Hongzhuang was fully focused on her preparations, Di Beichun and the other two were very quiet. They didn't want to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang because of their actions. They would occasionally look downstairs and pay attention to the movements of the Jintian faction. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were discovered in the morning, the people of the Jintian faction had already found this inn. They searched the room that Bailey Hongzhuang and Kong Wei had stayed in and asked a lot of information about them. The innkeeper and the waiter answered truthfully, especially the waiter who was completely dumbfounded when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and Kong Wei were the murderers of Gao Hanshun and Kong Wei. Yesterday, he was still vividly telling Bailey Hongzhuang and Kong Wei about this gossip. He didn't expect that the real murderers would appear in front of him. Now, he was really panicking. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Kong Wei didn't leave any useful information, so the people of the Jintian faction couldn't find anything. Di Beichun and the others were very clear about this. In fact, the people of the Jintian faction couldn't confirm whether the two of them were the real murderers or not. They just wanted to calm the public opinion and eliminate everyone's suspicions. Therefore, they forcefully put the blame on Bailey Hongzhuang and Kong Wei. Of course, there were many discerning people on the Emerald Island who were very clear about this. Night slowly fell, but the Emerald Island was getting more and more lively. Everyone's discussion about the Jintian faction was getting louder and louder. This was because in this short day, many people of the Jintian faction had arrived. The number of people surprised many people. Deng Liang and Kong Wei searched for an entire day, but couldn't find any trace of Bailey Hongzhuang and Kong Wei. Their faces were getting uglier and uglier. You still can't find any trace of the two of them? Lu Jiangang's face was gloomy, and his voice was filled with deep dissatisfaction. Hearing Lu Jiangang's words, Deng Liang and Kong Wei couldn't help but tremble. Cold sweat poured down their bodies, and their hearts were filled with nervousness and fear. Second Master, we've tried our best to find them, but those two fellows seem to have disappeared into thin air. No matter how hard we searched, we couldn't find any trace of them. Deng Liang's voice became softer and softer as he spoke. His narrow and bright eyes looked at Lu Jiangang from time to time, observing his reaction. Do you know how much your actions have affected our Jintian faction? Lu Jiangang's dignified face was filled with anger. His dignified face was full of anger. Dang Liang and Kong Wei. He and Kong Wei quickly kneeled on the ground and said, "Second Master, we didn't expect that those two fellows actually running to escape. No one was more than the two were Beichun and Kong, and something like this had happened inexplicably. They didn't understand what had happened at all, but they had already gotten themselves into so much trouble that they couldn't get rid of it. Normally, with their status, it was impossible for them to meet the second master. They didn't expect to meet the second master under such circumstances. If the second master got angry, they could lose their lives at any time. Chapter 2972. The teacup fell beside Dang Liang and Kong Wei. The tea splashed all over the floor, and the teacup was shattered into pieces. Lu Jiangong's eyes seemed to be able to spit fire, as if he couldn't wait to tear Dang Liang and Kong Wei into pieces. Dang Liang and Kong Wei couldn't help but tremble. The two of them were just small fries in the Jintian faction. If the second faction master wanted to kill them, it would only take a blink of an eye. Second faction master, we really don't know how things turned out like this. Please be magnanimous and spare us this time. Kong Wei kept kowtowing. His head soon broke and blood flowed out, but he didn't seem to feel the pain. He just kept begging for mercy. Now many forces have begun to suspect that we are using such despicable means to recruit members. Such a big pot of dirty water has been poured on our Jintian faction's head, and we can't wash it clean. And all of this is because of your negligence today. Can you two afford to pay this price? Lu Jiangong's anger still hadn't subsided. Recently, it was already very troublesome to help the faction master find those four daring fellows. He never thought that such a big thing would happen today. When he heard the news, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. After 2 years of continuous efforts, the Jintian faction strength was getting stronger and stronger, and the number of members was also increasing. In the end, there was a rumor that they were using such despicable means to recruit members. None of the members really wanted to join them, but they were controlled and had no choice but to join. This made him spit out a mouthful of old blood. The first thing he wanted to do was to draw his sword and kill the guy who spread the rumor. But in the end, the result of the investigation was that it was their faction's members who made the rumor. Moreover, after hearing the whole story, he was speechless to the extreme. And the other people's suspicions seemed to be well-founded. He knew very well that the most important thing now was to catch those two fellows. Only by catching the source could they completely explain this misunderstanding. However, they had so many members and almost surrounded the entire Emerald Island, but they still couldn't find any trace of those two fellows. This was too ironic. Although the Jintian faction looked very impressive with so many members gathered on the Emerald Island, in fact, everyone was waiting to see them make a fool of themselves. If they couldn't find those two fellows, then their Jintian faction's image and prestige would be greatly reduced. When he thought of this, he wanted to directly send those two fellows to heaven. Unfortunately, only these two fellows knew the image of those two, so he couldn't kill them for the time being. Second faction master, we really didn't expect that kid to say such words. Dang Liang was about to cry. What was going on? He couldn't say that he couldn't explain himself. If he didn't take it out, then there's wouldn't it? If he didn't take it, if to the two. Lu Jiangong's face was cold. I just received news that the sect leader will be coming to Emerald Island tomorrow. You should know how clear this matter is in your hearts. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.